Greetings, cozy knights. Lower your swords and rest by the fire. Tonight, we journey through the most intricate, heartbreaking, and downright wild quest lines hidden throughout the lands between. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're listening from tonight, and what games you want me to cover next, and subscribe if this helps you sleep. Ranni's Cosmic Conspiracy. Ranni the Witch commands one of Elden Ring's longest and most consequential questlines, stretching across multiple underground cities and culminating in an ending that fundamentally rewrites the established order. Unlike the standard Elden Lord conclusion, completing Ranni's quest unlocks the Age of Stars ending, where she ascends as a goddess and takes you, the Tarnished, on a 1,000-year voyage through the cosmos. This isn't just an alternate cutscene. It represents a complete philosophical rejection of the greater will's influence, severing the lands between from the meddling of outer gods. The questline demands you traverse Nokron, navigate the scarlet rot-infested Lake of Rot, defeat the cosmic horror known as Astel, and ultimately present yourself to Ranni's true form in the Cathedral of Manus. Every step matters, every conversation counts, and missing even one interaction can lock you out of witnessing this alternate reality. The Dark Moon Greatsword. At the conclusion of Ranni's questline, after descending into the hole beneath the Cathedral of Manus and finding her true body in that ethereal chamber, she bestows upon you the Dark Moon Greatsword, one of From Software's most iconic weapons across their entire catalogue. This blade has appeared in Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and now Elden Ring, always as a reward for pursuing arcane knowledge and aligning with moon-worshipping entities. The weapon scales primarily with intelligence, making it a cornerstone of battle mage builds, and its unique weapon skill unleashes waves of frost-imbued moonlight that can devastate groups of enemies. Beyond its mechanical excellence, the Dark Moon Greatsword carries deep lore significance as Ranni's own treasured blade, representing her commitment to cold, rational detachment from the passionate flames of ambition. Players who invest 38 points into intelligence can wield this legendary armament, experiencing firsthand why it's remained a fan favorite across From Software's catalogue for over a decade. The miniature Ranni mystery, deep within Ainsel River Main. After using the Waygate at Ranni's Rise and travelling to this underground realm, you discover a coffin containing what appears to be a miniature doll version of Ranni herself. This seemingly innocent collectible serves a crucial purpose. You must rest at a site of grace and speak to the doll 3 separate times, exhausting its dialogue options before it reveals its true nature and grant you a quest directive. Many players overlook this essential interaction, assuming the doll is merely a curiosity, and subsequently become stuck wondering how to progress Ranni's questline. The doll eventually directs you to confront the Baleful Shadow, a spectral hunter who bears an uncanny resemblance to Blaidd, foreshadowing the tragic fate awaiting your wolf companion. After defeating this shadow and continuing your conversation with the miniature Ranni, she rewards you with a discarded palace key, unlocking a chest in the Raya Lucaria Grand Library that contains the Dark Moon Ring. This ring becomes your passport past the magical seal protecting Ranni's true location, demonstrating how From Software weaves multiple gameplay systems together into a coherent narrative tapestry. Lake of Rot Navigation. The Lake of Rot stands as one of Elden Ring's most punishing environmental hazards, a vast expanse of scarlet corruption that rapidly builds up the rot status effect, draining your health in agonizing chunks. Reaching the far side of this nightmarish swamp is mandatory for Ranni's questline, as the path to the Grand Cloister and subsequently to Astel's boss, arena lies beyond. Players must carefully platform across stone pillars, time their sprints between islands of safety, and manage their consumable supply of preserving boluses to cleanse the rot buildup. Some clever tarnished discover that using the flame cleanse me incantation provides a renewable method of removing rot, assuming they invested points into faith, while others rely on heavy armor and massive health pools to simply tank the damage. The Lake of Rot tests patience, preparation, and problem-solving skills simultaneously, serving as a natural filter that ensures only determined questers reach Ranni's conclusion. Those who persevere eventually reach the coffin at the cliff's edge, which transports them to face Astel and continue their cosmic journey. Astel the Naturalborn. Astel, Naturalborn of the Void, represents one of Elden Ring's most visually striking and mechanically challenging boss encounters. A cosmic entity resembling a massive scorpion with a grotesque skull face and galaxy-filled wings. This creature dwells in the depths beyond the Lake of Rot, guarding the passage to the Moonlight Altar where Ranni awaits. Defeating Astel requires mastering its teleportation patterns, avoiding its gravity-based attacks that can instantly obliterate careless players, and recognizing the brief windows of opportunity when its head becomes vulnerable to strikes. The boss drops the remembrance of the Naturalborn, which can be traded to Enya at the Round Table Hold, for either the Bastard Star's Flail or the Waves of Darkness Ash of War, both powerful options for specific build archetypes. Beyond its gameplay significance, Astel's existence raises profound lore questions about the nature of the cosmos, the relationship between the stars and the lands between, and why such a creature guards the path to Ranni's liberation. Some scholars theorize that Astel represents the same cosmic force that destroyed the Eternal Cities, making its defeat a symbolic reversal of ancient catastrophes. Blaidd's inevitable tragedy. Blaidd the Half-Wolf serves as one of Ranni's most loyal companions, a warrior created by the Two Fingers specifically to protect and guide her toward her ordained destiny. His questline intertwines with Ranni's as you first encounter him howling in the Mistwood, then fight alongside him against Bloodhound Knight Darriwil in the Forlorn Hound, Evergaol, and eventually work with him to search for Nokron's entrance after Radahn's defeat. The tragic irony of Blaidd's existence lies in his fundamental programming. He was designed to serve Ranni, yet simultaneously created with a failsafe that drives him to madness if she ever opposes the Two Fingers' will. As Ranni's questline progresses, and her rebellion against the greater will becomes undeniable, you witness Blaidd's mental deterioration. War Counselor E.G. eventually imprisons Blaidd in the Forlorn Hound Evergaol, desperately hoping to spare him the agony of his conflicting loyalties. But this mercy proves temporary. When you finally return to Ranni's Rise after completing her quest, you find Blaidd consumed by madness, forcing you to kill your former ally in self-defense. He drops his armor set and the royal greatsword, physical remnants of a tragic figure torn between unconditional love and unbreakable programming, a fate he could never escape no matter how noble his intentions. Seluvis's puppet schemes. Seluvis, the sorcerer residing in one of the Three Sisters' towers, harbors disturbing secrets beneath his veneer of arcane scholarship. His questline revolves around a collection of spirit puppets, humans he has transformed into mindless servants through the application of his signature Amber Starlight potion. Seluvis attempts to manipulate you into administering this potion to Nephili Lu, turning the noble warrior into another addition to his twisted collection. But you can choose to expose his plot or simply ignore his requests entirely. If you progress his quest line, Seluvis grants access to his hidden underground chamber where his puppet collection resides, offering to sell you summonable spirit versions of these unfortunate individuals. The questline culminates in Seluvis providing you with a potion allegedly meant for Ranni herself, testing whether you'll betray your oath to the witch in exchange for his favor. Giving the potion to Ranni immediately ends Seluvis's questline and earns her wrath, though you can use the Church of Vows to reset her hostility. Alternatively, you can give the potion to Gideon Offner, who destroys it, or to Dung Eater, who becomes corrupted, but not puppeted. Seluvis mysteriously dies after Ranni slays the Baleful Shadow, found slumped lifeless in his tower, suggesting Ranni discovered his treachery and enacted fatal retribution. His death allows you to purchase powerful puppet spirits from his corpse, including the Jar-White puppet and others, turning his dark legacy into useful tools. Three Sisters Tower access. The Three Sisters area in northeastern Leonia represents a crucial location for multiple questlines, featuring 3 distinct towers that house Ranni, Seluvis, and Renna respectively. Accessing this region requires defeating Royal Knight Loretta, the spectral guardian of Carrier Manor, who wields powerful glintstone sorceries and charges across the arena on her incorporeal steed. Only after her defeat does the magical barrier preventing access to the Three Sisters dissolve, allowing you to ascend the plateau and begin exploring. Ranni's rise serves as the primary hub, where the witch herself awaits in the chamber at the tower's summit, ready to recruit you into her service. Seluvis's rise houses the duplicitous sorcerer and his hidden basement laboratory containing the puppet collection. Renna's rise appears sealed initially, its entrance blocked by an impenetrable magical barrier that only dissipates after you pledge service to Ranni and progress sufficiently through her questline. Once accessible, Renna's rise features a waygate at its summit that transports you to Ansel River Main, providing the essential connection between surface exploration and underground progression. These towers embody the interconnected nature of Elden Ring's world design, where physical locations serve as narrative anchors and progression gates simultaneously. Royal Knight Loretta's Guard. Royal Knight Loretta presents a significant skill check for players attempting to access the Three Sisters and initiate Ranni's questline. Combining ranged sorcery attacks with devastating cavalry charges that can quickly overwhelm unprepared Tarnished. This spectral knight patrols the grounds of Carrier Manor, an estate haunted by magical hands and hostile nobles, serving as the final obstacle before reaching Ranni's domain. Loretta's moveset includes powerful glintstone projectiles that track your position, sweeping halberd swings that punish aggressive melee attempts, and mounted charges that cover enormous distances with lethal precision. Players must learn to recognize her attack patterns, dodge through her magic volleys, and capitalize on the brief recovery windows following her more committal moves. Defeating Loretta grants access to the Three Sisters Plateau and rewards you with the Loretta's Greatbow sorcery and her memory, which can be exchanged for additional spells. More importantly, her death represents the removal of Carrier Manor's primary defender, symbolizing how even the most loyal guardians cannot prevent the inevitable march of change that Ranni represents. Some players use spirit summons to divide Loretta's attention, while others rely on careful spacing and patience to solo this challenging duel. Nokron, the Eternal City. Nokron, the Eternal City serves as one of Elden Ring's most spectacular hidden areas, an underground metropolis of crystalline buildings and ancient architecture accessible only after defeating Starscourge Radahn. Radahn's death causes a massive star to crash into Limgrave, creating a crater that opens a pathway into this subterranean realm, revealing secrets the surface world had long forgotten. Nokron's significance to Ranni's questline cannot be overstated, as the city contains the Fingerslayer Blaidd, an essential artifact required to slay the two fingers and free Ranni from her predetermined fate. Exploring Nokron reveals a civilization that once thrived in defiance of the Golden Order, developing technologies and philosophies antithetical to the Erdtree's dominion. The architecture showcases a unique aesthetic blending Gothic structures with celestial imagery, creating an atmosphere of faded grandeur and cosmic mystery. Players navigate rooftops, battle ancestral followers and silver tears, and eventually confront the Mimic Tear boss, guarding access to deeper sections. Beyond its role in Ranni's quest, Nokron rewards thorough exploration with powerful items including the larval tear, required for respecification, unique armor sets, and weapons found nowhere else in the lands between. The city stands as physical evidence that opposition to the greater will predates even the Shattering, suggesting cycles of rebellion stretching across ages. The Mimic Tear encounter. The Mimic Tear boss represents one of Elden Ring's most conceptually brilliant encounters, forcing players to battle an exact duplicate of their own character, wielding identical equipment and abilities. This shape-shifting entity guards the path to Knight's sacred ground in Nokron, where the Fingerslayer Blaidd awaits. The fight's difficulty scales directly with your own power level, as the Mimic Tear perfectly mirrors your stats, weapons, spells, and even consumable items. This creates a unique situation where min-max characters with optimized builds actually face more challenging fights than lower-level explorers, inverting the traditional power curve. Clever players exploit the Mimic Tear's mimicry by equipping terrible weapons and no armor before triggering the fight, then quickly swapping to their actual gear once the boss has already copied their weakened state. Defeating this silvery doppelganger rewards you with the larval tear key item and the silver tear mask helmet, which boosts arcane at the cost of reduced physical damage. More significantly, the victory clears the path to retrieving the Fingerslayer Blaidd, advancing Ranni's questline toward its ultimate conclusion. The Mimic Tear encounter serves as both a mechanical challenge and a philosophical statement, suggesting that our greatest enemy might be our own reflection, our own methods turned against us. The Fingerslayer Blaidd's significance. The Fingerslayer Blaidd represents one of Elden Ring's most lore-significant items, despite its relatively minor gameplay function, serving as the key that allows Ranni to sever her connection to the two fingers and truly rebel against the greater will. This weapon was crafted by the ancient eternal cities specifically to slay the cosmic envoys that serve the outer gods, representing humanity's attempt to claim agency in a universe dominated by incomprehensible entities. Retrieving the blade from Knight's sacred ground in Nokron and delivering it to Ranni triggers a crucial turning point in her questline, as she uses it to kill her two fingers in a scene players never directly witness. The blade's existence proves that opposition to the greater will is not merely philosophical, but practical. That tools exist capable of harming beings previously thought invulnerable. Its creation required knowledge and techniques lost to the surface world, suggesting the Eternal Cities achieved technological and magical heights that contemporary Tarnished cannot imagine. When you present the Fingerslayer Blaidd to Ranni at Ranni's rise, she thanks you with genuine emotion, acknowledging that you've provided the means for the liberation. This moment crystallizes the player's role not as a mere servant, but as an active co-conspirator in overthrowing cosmic order, making you complicit in what the Golden Order would consider the highest heresy. Cathedral of Manus. The Cathedral of Manus represents the ultimate destination in Ranni's questline. A massive structure atop the Moonlight Altar accessible only after defeating Astel and using the Dark Moon Ring to pass the magical seal. This cathedral serves as Ranni's true sanctum, the place where her discarded physical body resides after she shed her Empyrean flesh, to pursue a path of cold logic and cosmic transcendence. The building itself radiates an otherworldly atmosphere, bathed in moonlight that seems to originate from nowhere and everywhere simultaneously, with architecture suggesting purposes beyond mortal comprehension. Inside the cathedral, you find a deep hole in the floor, and, descending into this abyss, leads to a surreal chamber where Ranni's true form waits, a miniature, doll-like body lying in state. Approaching her triggers dialogue, where she expresses surprise and perhaps gratitude that you followed her to the very end, acknowledging that your loyalty exceeded her expectations. This location serves as the symbolic endpoint of her physical journey, the place where she sheds even the last vestiges of her connection to the lands between before ascending to godhood. The cathedral's name, Manus Celes, suggests celestial hands, perhaps referencing the cosmic forces that Ranni seeks to embrace, or the hands of fate she's determined to escape. Ranni's 1,000-year voyage. Completing Ranni's questline and choosing the Age of Stars ending commits you to a 1,000-year voyage through the cosmos, alongside the newly ascended goddess, abandoning the lands between to its own devices without divine oversight. This ending's cutscene shows Ranni summoning a massive, full moon that engulfs the sky as she takes your hand and prepares to depart, speaking of an order based on fear and doubt, rather than faith and certainty. The implications are staggering. You're not merely changing who sits on the throne, but fundamentally altering the relationship between mortals and gods, replacing dogmatic worship with cold understanding and distant reverence. The 1,000-year journey suggests that Ranni's reign will occur across vast temporal and spatial scales, with her influence operating from cosmic distances rather than earthly proximity. Whether this represents liberation or abandonment remains deliberately ambiguous, as From Software leaves players to interpret whether removing divine presence truly benefits the lands between, or merely trades one form of cosmic meddling for another. Some scholars argue that Ranni's ending represents the most radical departure from established order, surpassing even the Frenzied Flame in its implications, as it doesn't destroy the world, but rather removes it from the familiar patterns that have governed existence since time immemorial. Your character's fate, bound to Ranni for a millennium, raises questions about identity, purpose, and whether eternal companionship with a goddess constitutes reward or punishment. Quest interaction complications. Ranni's questline demonstrates extraordinary complexity through its interactions with multiple other NPCs and their individual storylines, creating a web of dependencies that can easily trap unwary players. Progressing too far with Ranni before completing certain steps in Blaidd's quest can lock you out of his dialogue and rewards, while Seluvis's questline requires careful timing relative to Ranni's progression to access all puppet options. Additionally, Ranni's quest intersects with Fia's questline through their mutual connection to the curse mark of death, and hastily advancing one can impact the other's availability. Players pursuing Ranni's ending must also avoid taking the Frenzied Flame until the very last moment before the final boss, as accepting this mark of chaos locks them into that ending unless they undertake Millicent's entire questline to obtain Miquella's needle. The interconnected nature of these quests reflects From Software's philosophy that player choice carries weight and consequence, rewarding those who approach the world methodically while punishing hasty progression. Some players deliberately choose to ignore Ranni's questline entirely, finding the moral implications of her rebellion troubling or preferring the certainty of traditional Elden Lord endings. Others view her path as the only truly meaningful choice, the sole option that grants genuine agency rather than merely selecting which cosmic power claims dominance. Volcano Manor's Dark Bargain. Volcano Manor offers one of Elden Ring's most morally ambiguous questlines, inviting players to join an organization of Tarnished, dedicated to hunting and murdering their fellow seekers of the Elden Ring. Upon reaching Mount Gelmir and entering the manor, either through Raya's teleportation service or the treacherous path through the mountain itself, you encounter Lady Tanith, who extends an offer to join their rebellion against the Erdtree and the Two Fingers. Accepting her invitation grants you the drawing room key and access to a series of assassination contracts marked by red invasion signs scattered across the lands between. The questline's central premise revolves around eliminating specific tarnished targets, fellow warriors seeking lordship, supposedly to prevent them from perpetuating the cycle of violence and tyranny that the Erdtree represents. What makes Volcano Manor particularly fascinating is its complete lack of mechanical consequences. You suffer no penalties for murdering these NPCs, face no retribution from the Round Table Hold, and experience no branching storyline that acknowledges your actions. This absence of consequence itself becomes a commentary on the Lands Between's moral vacuum, where might determines right and loyalty proves more valuable than virtue. The manor serves as a gathering place for outcasts and rebels, including Patches the Merchant, Diallos the Grieving Knight, and Recusant Bernal, who provides his own additional contracts. Old Knight Istvan's Fall. Old Knight Istvan represents the first assassination target in Volcano Manor's questline. A seemingly honorable tarnished warrior who you invade near Warmaster's shack in Limgrave, using the red summon sign provided by Tanith's contract letter. Istvan fights with measured discipline, utilizing a greatsword and greatshield combination alongside gravity-based skills that can pull careless invaders into devastating combos. The invasion takes place in a small canyon area, limiting your movement options and forcing confrontation in tight quarters where Istvan's defensive playstyle thrives. Defeating him requires patience and tactical thinking, as his shield blocks most frontal attacks and his gravity pull can interrupt your own offensive sequences. Victory rewards you with the scaled armor set, a heavy but effective protective ensemble favored by warriors who value defense over mobility. Returning to Tanith at Volcano Manor after Istvan's death grants you the Magma Shot sorcery as recognition for completing your first contract. Istvan's inclusion as the initial target feels deliberate, as he represents a relatively straightforward combat challenge without complex gimmicks or overwhelming power, easing players into the assassination mechanic. Istvan appears to be a genuine knight pursuing lordship through honorable means, making his murder particularly questionable and establishing the moral ambiguity that permeates Volcano Manor's entire operation. Rileigh the Idle's Hunt. Rileigh the Idle serves as Volcano Manor's second assassination target, a crossbow-wielding tarnished who you invade near the Bridge of Iniquity in Altus Plateau. The fight requires navigating treacherous cliffsides and carefully jumping down multiple ledges while mounted on Torrent, testing your platforming skills before you even engage the target. Rileigh specializes in ranged combat, maintaining distance with crossbow fire, while occasionally closing for dagger strikes if you pressure too aggressively. This assassination rewards spatial awareness and aggressive play, as giving Rileigh room to reload and fire creates a war of attrition you're likely to lose. smart invaders rush forward immediately after spawning, closing the gap before Rileigh establishes favorable positioning and forcing the fight into melee range, where the crossbow's advantages evaporate. Defeating Rileigh yields the Rileigh the Idle Ashes Spirit summon, allowing you to summon this NPC in future encounters, and the Crepus's Black Key crossbow, a unique ranged weapon. Returning to Tanith grants you the Serpent Bone Blade as reward, a unique katana that builds poison rapidly and scales with both strength and dexterity. Rileigh's backstory remains largely mysterious, identified only as idle in their title, perhaps suggesting someone who abandoned the active pursuit of lordship and instead settled into comfortable stagnation. The manor views such complacency as worthy of death, implying that in their philosophy, neutrality and passivity constitute sins as grave as active opposition. Juno Hoslow's bloody finale. Juno Hoslow, Knight of Blood, represents Volcano Manor's third and final standard assassination target, requiring you to invade him in the frozen wastes of mountaintops of the Giants, northwest of the ancient Snow Valley ruins. Reaching this location demands progressing deep into Elden Ring's late-game content, making Hoslow the most challenging assassination, both in terms of access and combat difficulty. Hoslow fights with dual whips imbued with blood loss, creating spinning tornado attacks that build hemorrhage rapidly while maintaining significant range. His aggressive fighting style punishes passive play and shield reliance, as whips bypass most guard stances, and the bleed buildup continues even through successful blocks. Players must dodge precisely through his flurries, punish the recovery windows after his extended combos, and manage their spacing carefully to avoid the sweet spot range, where whips deal maximum damage. Defeating Hoslow rewards you with the complete Hoslow set armor and the Petal Whip, one half of a matched pair of unique weapons that excel at status effect application. The second whip can only be obtained by completing Dialis' questline in Jar-Bairn, creating an interesting situation where full completion of Volcano Manor's offerings requires pursuing multiple narrative threads. Returning to Tanith after Hoslow's death grants you Taker's Cameo, a powerful talisman that restores HP whenever you defeat an enemy, providing sustain for aggressive combat builds. Hoslow's title as Knight of Blood suggests connection to Mog's blood cult, raising questions about whether Volcano Manor's rebellion extends beyond simple opposition to the Erdtree. Taker's Cameo utility. Taker's Cameo represents one of Elden Ring's most practical talismans for aggressive playstyles, restoring health with every enemy killed and thereby enabling sustained combat without consuming flask charges. This reward for completing Volcano Manor's 3 assassination contracts provides immediate value for players who favor offensive builds and frequently engage groups of enemies. The health restoration scales with the enemy's strength, making the talisman particularly effective in dungeons and open-world encounters featuring numerous foes. When combined with other lifesteal mechanics like the Blasphemous Blade's weapon skill or the Godskin Swaddling Cloth talisman, Taker's Cameo enables near-immortal builds that recover health faster than enemies can deplete it, assuming you maintain aggressive offense. The talisman's name references the act of taking life to sustain yourself, philosophically aligning with Volcano Manor's predatory ideology, where strength justifies action and the weak exist to feed the strong. Interestingly, Taker's Cameo appears on the drawing room table, even if you kill Rykard before completing all assassination contracts, suggesting Tanith's rewards are rewards for the contracts themselves, rather than personal gifts requiring her presence. This mechanical detail preserves player access to unique items, even when questline progression diverges from optimal paths, demonstrating From Software's commitment to reducing permanent missable content compared to their earlier titles. Raging Wolf Armor Set. The Raging Wolf Armor Set stands as one of Volcano Manor's most coveted rewards, obtained exclusively through Recusant Bernal's additional assassination contract, targeting Vargram the Raging Wolf in Leyndell, royal capital. This contract becomes available after completing Tanith's first 2 assassinations and speaking with Bernal, who reveals his own separate agenda within the Manor's operations. The Raging Wolf set features prominently in Elden Ring's promotional materials, clothing the character used in marketing screenshots and trailers, making it instantly recognizable to anyone familiar with the game's advertising. Beyond its visual appeal, the armor provides excellent balance between weight and protection, making it a popular choice for quality builds that invest in both strength and dexterity. Each piece of the set features aggressive design elements, including a wolf-themed helmet with fierce expression and cape details that flow dramatically during movement. Obtaining the complete set requires invading and defeating Vargram, a skilled NPC invader who fights with great swords and aggressive pressure, testing your dueling capabilities. The set's association with Bernal's questline adds narrative depth, as Vargram apparently has history with both Bernal and the Manor, creating a personal dimension to what otherwise appears as another assassination contract. Players who skip or abandon Volcano Manor before completing Bernal's contract permanently lock themselves out of acquiring this armor set on that playthrough, forcing a new Game Plus cycle or character restart to access it again. Bull Goat Armor Weight. The Bull Goat armor set claims the title of heaviest armor in all of Elden Ring, providing unmatched physical protection at the cost of enormous equip load requirements and drastically reduced mobility. This set is obtained through invading and defeating Great Horn Tragoth during Patch's assassination contract in Mount Gelmir, available only after joining Volcano Manor and progressing Patch's questline sufficiently. The complete Bull Goat set weighs a staggering 63 pounds, requiring massive investment in endurance or the use of Arsenal Charm and Great Jars, Arsenal Talismans, to maintain medium roll capability. Players willing to accept fat roll movement in exchange for superior defense find the Bull Goat set invaluable for face-tanking enemy attacks and poise trading through otherwise devastating combos. The armor's poise rating approaches the maximum possible in the game, making wearers nearly impossible to stagger during attacks, enabling hyper-aggressive playstyles where you simply outtrade opponents through superior defense. Fashion Souls enthusiasts have mixed feelings about the Bull Goat set's aesthetics, as its bulky, horn-adorned design prioritizes intimidation over elegance, creating a character silhouette that screams immovable object. The set's association with Tragoth, a legendary tarnished known for assisting players against multiple bosses, adds tragic dimensions to his assassination, as you murder a character who previously offered aid in your own struggles. Patches claims Tragoth stands in the way of the Manor's goals, but whether this justification holds truth or merely represents Patches' typical treachery remains deliberately ambiguous. Rykard's questline termination. Defeating Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, before completing all of Volcano Manor's assassination contracts causes all pending missions to fail immediately, and NPCs to disperse from the Manor permanently. This creates a significant pressure point for players attempting to navigate Volcano Manor's content, as the boss's proximity to the Manor entrance makes accidental progression frustratingly easy. Rykard waits beyond the teleporter accessed through the Manor's hidden passages, and simply walking into his arena without preparation can trigger the boss fight, starting a battle you might not be ready to finish. Killing Rykard ends Tanith's questline progression, removes Bernal from his merchant location, and sends Diallos on his journey to Jar-Bairn, fundamentally altering the manor's social landscape. Players who defeat Rykard prematurely can still complete existing assassination contracts they've already accepted, as the invasion markers remain on their maps, but can't receive new contracts or progress those NPCs further. The questline's fragility reflects From Software's traditional design philosophy, where player actions carry irreversible consequences, punishing hasty exploration and rewarding methodical completion. Interestingly, Tanith remains in the manor after Rykard's death, but becomes non-interactive until you find her in Rykard's boss arena, consuming his corpse in a disturbing display of devotion. This post-boss scene reveals the depth of her commitment to the Serpent God and raises questions about whether her rebellion against the Erd Tree stemmed from genuine ideology or fanatic worship transferred from one deity to another. Moral consequence vacuum. Volcano Manor's assassination questline features 0 mechanical consequences for murdering fellow Tarnished, creating a moral vacuum that perfectly embodies the Lands Between's lawless nature. No NPC at the Round Table Hold acknowledges your participation in the manor's contracts. Gideon Offner expresses no concern about your extracurricular executions, and Melina offers no judgment about your choice to hunt other seekers of the Elden Ring. This absence of systemic response feels intentional rather than oversight, reinforcing the narrative reality that in a world where gods war through mortal proxies and cosmic forces manipulate reality itself, individual morality becomes meaningless. The game neither rewards nor punishes you for accepting or refusing Volcano Manor's offers, presenting it as a purely tactical decision about whether you want the unique armor sets and weapons versus completing the quest lines of your targets. Some players find this moral neutrality refreshing, appreciating the freedom to explore darker narrative paths without heavy-handed judgment from the game's systems. Others feel disappointed by the lack of recognition, wishing their choices generated more reactive storytelling that acknowledged the weight of assassination. This design choice aligns with Elden Ring's broader philosophy that the Tarnished exists beyond traditional morality, operating in a liminal space where heroism and villainy blur into simple pragmatism. Whether Volcano Manor represents true philosophical rebellion against unjust cosmic order, or merely substitutes one tyranny for another, remains deliberately unresolved, leaving players to form their own conclusions. Tanith's Corpse Feast. After defeating Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, and returning to Volcano Manor, players find Lady Tanith missing from her usual chair in the lobby. Locating her requires returning to Rykard's boss arena, where she kneels beside his massive serpentine corpse, using a knife to carve flesh from his remains and consuming it in a ritualistic display of devotion. This disturbing scene reveals Tanith's true nature as a fanatic worshipper of the god-devouring serpent, someone whose rebellion against the Erd Tree stemmed not from philosophy, but from religious fervor, redirected toward an alternative deity. Players can interact with Tanith during this feast, and giving her the dancer's castanets acquired from Patches' questline at the Shaded Castle triggers additional dialogue, but produces no known rewards or quest progression. The scene serves primarily as character development, demonstrating that even in death, Rykard commands absolute loyalty from his followers, and that Tanith's sophisticated aristocratic demeanor masked primal devotion. Players can choose to attack and kill Tanith while she feasts, which causes her bodyguard, Tanith's Knight, to immediately invade, appearing in the boss arena as a red phantom. Defeating this knight rewards you with the aspect of the Crucible, Breath Incantation and Tanith's Consort armor set, items otherwise unobtainable through pacifist interaction. The feast scene exemplifies from software's talent for environmental storytelling using physical positioning and animated behavior to convey character depth that dialogue alone could never achieve, turning a simple NPC into a memorable, tragic figure whose story concludes in darkness. Alexander's Stormhill predicament. Iron Fist. Alexander, the warrior Jar, first appears northwest of the War Master's shack in Limgrave, stuck in the hole in the ground and calling out for help as players pass nearby. This initial encounter establishes Alexander's character as enthusiastic but accident-prone, possessing grand ambitions of becoming a legendary warrior despite his tendency to get wedged into geographical features. Players who approach and speak with Alexander learn he's attempting to travel to Caelid for the Redan festival, viewing the legendary demigod's combat festival as an opportunity to test himself against the mightiest warriors. Freeing Alexander requires standing behind him and delivering several strong charged attacks, simulating the force needed to dislodge his large ceramic body from the earth. Once freed, Alexander expresses gratitude and teaches you the triumphant delight gesture, a celebratory emote, while also gifting you a piece of exalted flesh that temporarily boosts attack power. This first meeting can be entirely missed, as the Stormhill location sits off the critical path and Alexander's voice only carries so far. Players who skip this initial encounter can still begin his questline later, though they'll miss contextual dialogue that frames his journey and explains his presence at subsequent locations. Alexander's cheerful personality and determination to grow stronger, despite repeated setbacks, make him one of Elden Ring's most beloved NPCs, a rare friendly face in a world dominated by tragedy and betrayal. Gael Tunnel blockage. Alexander's second optional appearance occurs at the rear Gael Tunnel entrance, accessible from Limgrave, where he stands wedged between terrain, unable to proceed forward. Speaking to him reveals his continued journey toward Caelid, though geographical ignorance has led him to an impassable position. To actually help Alexander progress, players must enter Gael Tunnel from the Caelid side, fight through the mining dungeon filled with demi-humans and the magma worm boss, then unlock the door separating the two entrances. This allows Alexander to continue his path. Though the questline doesn't actually require this interaction to progress, the optional nature of this encounter means many players never discover it, proceeding directly to Alexander's appearance at the Redan festival without witnessing his Gael Tunnel struggles. Those who do find him gain additional dialogue explaining his determination and naivety about the lands between's geography. From software includes these optional encounters to reward thorough exploration and create the sense that NPCs exist as independent entities with their own journeys, rather than quest markers that appear only when needed. Alexander's tendency to get stuck reflects both literal physical challenges of navigating terrain with a large ceramic body and metaphorical obstacles that warriors must overcome on their path to greatness. The Gael Tunnel represents one such obstacle, a geographical barrier that requires external assistance to surpass, foreshadowing how Alexander's ultimate goal will depend on receiving help from the Tarnished. Redan Festival participation. Alexander's appearance at the Redan Festival in Caelid marks a significant milestone in his questline, as he finally reaches the legendary combat gathering he's been traveling toward since Limgrave. The festival itself only activates after certain progression triggers, requiring players to either activate Altus Plateau's map or progress Ranni's questline to a specific point. Once active, Alexander can be found in the courtyard of Redmane Castle alongside other festival participants, expressing excitement about the upcoming battle against Starscourge Radahn. During the actual boss fight against Radahn, Alexander appears as one of multiple summonable allies whose golden summoning signs dot the boss arena, allowing you to call upon his aid in battling the towering demigod. Alexander's combat performance during this fight proves surprisingly effective, as his jar body provides excellent poise and his attacks stagger Radahn more reliably than many other available summons. After defeating Radahn and activating the new Site of Grace in the Wailing Dunes, Alexander appears nearby, picking through the battlefield, collecting remains of fallen warriors to absorb into his jar body and increase his own power. Speaking to him here reveals his fascination with Radahn's incredible strength and his intention to incorporate pieces of the defeated demigod into himself. Following the warrior jar tradition of consuming greatness to achieve greatness, this encounter cannot be skipped if you want to complete Alexander's questline, as it serves as the critical junction point where his journey transitions from eager aspiration to genuine warrior development. Oil Pot Liberation. Alexander's next appearance takes place in Liurnia of the Lakes, specifically on the cliff south of the Carian Study Hall and above the hidden village of Jarberg. Once again, you find him stuck in a hole, but this time simple violence won't suffice to free him. The battle against Radahn cracked Alexander's ceramic shell, making his body more fragile and susceptible to shattering under excessive force. Instead of hitting him directly, you must first coat Alexander with an oil pot, making his surface slippery enough to slide free when struck. Oil pots require the Nomadic Warrior's Cookbook 17 to craft. Purchased from the nomadic merchant in Siofra River underground for 1,000 runes. This cookbook unlocks the recipe requiring 1 melted mushroom per pot, a crafting material found throughout Siofra, River and other underground areas. After crafting or purchasing an oil pot, you throw it at Alexander, then deliver charged attacks from behind, popping him free similarly to the Stormhill encounter, but with the additional lubrication step. Successfully freeing Alexander rewards you with 3 pieces of exalted flesh and additional dialogue about his plans to harden his body in extreme heat, foreshadowing his next location. This encounter can be entirely skipped while still progressing Alexander's questline, as the game allows sequence breaking that lets you simply jump to later meetings without addressing earlier ones. However, skipping this interaction means missing out on character development and 3 consumable buffs, making it worthwhile for completionists despite its optional nature. Lava Pool Hardening. Alexander's appearance in Mount Gelmir demonstrates his determination to strengthen his ceramic body through exposure to extreme temperatures, sitting in a pool of molten lava south of Fort Blaidd in the volcanic region. Reaching him requires careful navigation of the lava lake while avoiding or defeating the magma worm that patrols the western section of this area. Players can approach Alexander by riding Torrent to a raised rock formation near his position, allowing conversation without taking continuous lava damage. Speaking to Alexander reveals his theory that extended exposure to volcanic heat will strengthen and harden his ceramic shell, repairing the cracks sustained during the Radahn battle and making him more resilient for future combat. He rewards this meeting with the Jar Helmet, a unique headpiece shaped like an upturned pot that enhances the damage of all thrown pot items, making it essential for builds centered around consumable combat items. This reward serves practical purposes while also allowing players to physically embody Alexander's warrior jar aesthetic, creating fashion Souls opportunities for pot-themed character builds. The lava pool meeting can be skipped entirely if you defeat the fire giant before visiting, as Alexander's questline allows jumping directly to his final location in Crumbling Farum Azula. However, skipping this encounter means missing the jar helmet reward permanently unless obtained through trading with other players. Alexander's presence in Mount Gelmir also demonstrates how NPC questlines organically integrate with world exploration, placing characters in thematically appropriate locations that reinforce their narrative arcs through environmental context. Fire Giant Summon. If you've met Alexander at the lava pool in Mount Gelmir, his golden summoning sign appears inside the Fire Giant's boss arena in the mountaintops of the Giants, offering his assistance against one of the game's most intimidating opponents. The Fire Giant represents a massive difficulty spike for many players, combining enormous health pools with devastating area of effect attacks and the awkward positioning challenges inherent to fighting colossal enemies. Alexander's summon sign appears specifically at the northern entrance to the arena, requiring players to approach from that direction, rather than the more obvious southern gate. Summoning Alexander for this fight prevents riding torrent throughout the battle, removing the mobility advantage, but gaining a powerful ally who can tank hits and maintain aggression while you recover or heal. Alexander's poise and stagger resistance make him particularly valuable during the Fire Giant's second phase, where the boss becomes more aggressive and unpredictable. Successfully defeating the Fire Giant with or without Alexander's help unlocks the Forge of the Giants and progresses the main story toward Crumbling Farum Azula, which coincidentally serves as Alexander's final location. Players who skip summoning Alexander for this fight suffer no questline consequences, as his availability here represents optional cooperation rather than mandatory progression. The summoning sign serves primarily as a reward for thorough quest completion, providing mechanical assistance to players who invested time in following Alexander's journey, while allowing others to face the challenge solo. Crumbling Farum Azula Duel. Alexander's questline concludes in Crumbling Farum Azula, the floating ruins existing outside normal time where ancient dragons once ruled. Finding him requires accessing the Dragon Temple rooftop area, specifically using the Dragon Temple lift located behind a locked door, requiring 2 Stonesword keys. Upon reaching the rooftop platform and exploring northward, you encounter Alexander standing beside a broken dragon carcass, having survived the journey to this impossible location through sheer determination. Speaking to him triggers dialogue where Alexander acknowledges your strength has surpassed his own, requesting an honorable duel to test himself against the greatest warrior he's encountered. Accepting his challenge initiates a boss fight against Iron Fist Alexander, who fights with powerful punches, jumping attacks, and pot-throwing abilities that reflect his Jar warrior heritage. The fight demands respect despite Alexander's friendly demeanor, as his attacks hit hard and his poise makes trading blows unfavorable for lighter builds. Defeating Alexander triggers an emotional farewell, where he congratulates you on your victory and expresses satisfaction at dying in glorious combat rather than slowly rusting away in obscurity. His death rewards you with 2 talismans, the Shard of Alexander, which greatly boosts weapon skill attack power by 15%, and the Warrior Jar Shard, which provides a weaker 10% boost to the same stat. Additionally, you receive Alexander's Innards, a key item that can be given to Jar-Bairn in Jarburg to complete another questline thread. The jewel represents Alexander achieving his lifelong dream of testing himself against a truly legendary warrior, finding honor in death after a journey filled with persistence and growth. Shard of Alexander power. The Shard of Alexander talisman stands as one of Elden Ring's most powerful offensive talismans, increasing weapon skill attack power by 15% and thereby amplifying the effectiveness of Ashes of War that define entire build archetypes. This reward for defeating Alexander in Crumbling Farum Azula becomes essential for players who center their combat strategies around weapon skills rather than standard light and heavy attacks. Builds utilizing powerful skills like Hoarfrost Stomp, Bloodhound Step, or Lion's Claw gain enormous value from this talisman, as the 15% damage boost applies to the skill portion of their damage output. Quality builds that rely on varied weapon skills for different situations benefit particularly well, as the Shard of Alexander enhances every tool in their arsenal simultaneously. The talisman's existence represents the culmination of Alexander's warrior philosophy made manifest. By consuming the remains of legendary fighters throughout his journey, he literally became stronger through absorption, and upon his death, that accumulated power transfers to you in concentrated form. Players who prefer spellcasting or basic weapon attacks might find the Shard of Alexander less valuable than other talisman options. But for skill-focused builds, few talismans compete with its raw offensive power. The talisman's purple color and jar fragment design serve as permanent reminders of Alexander's journey, transforming his tragic end into lasting mechanical benefit. Comparing the Shard of Alexander to the weaker Warrior Jar Shard highlights how Alexander's final confrontation represents his peak performance, rewarding players with the superior talisman for honoring his request for an ultimate test. Alexander's Innards purpose. Alexander's Innards serve as a key quest item received alongside the Shard of Alexander talisman after defeating the Warrior Jar in Crumbling Farum Azula. This item description reveals it contains the essence of all the warriors Alexander consumed throughout his journey, compressed into a single transferable package that can continue the Jar warrior lineage. The innards are meant for Jar-Bairn, a small living jar residing in Jarburg, who refers to Alexander as his uncle and aspires to follow in his footsteps. Players who completed Dialos's questline in Jarburg and witnessed the tragic events that transpired there understand the significance of delivering Alexander's innards to Jar-Bairn, as the small jar has assumed the role of village protector after Dialos's sacrifice. Giving the innards to Jar-Bairn triggers heartfelt dialogue, where the small jar vows to become strong like Alexander, preserving his uncle's legacy and continuing the warrior jar tradition. After resting at the nearby Site of Grace, Jar-Bairn disappears from his usual spot, leaving behind the companion jar talisman as a parting gift. This talisman boosts the damage of all throwable pot items, making it essential for builds centered around consumable weaponry. The entire exchange represents the passing of generational knowledge, transforming Alexander's accumulated power into the foundation for Jar-Bairn's future growth. Players who never discovered Jarburg or failed to complete the prerequisite interactions with Jar-Bairn can carry Alexander's innards indefinitely without purpose, missing this touching conclusion to interconnected storylines. The innards exemplify how Elden Ring rewards thorough exploration and questline completion, hiding emotional payoffs behind layers of optional content that many players never witness. Jar-Bairn's journey. Jar-Bairn represents one of Elden Ring's most wholesome NPCs, despite his relatively minimal screen time, serving as the de facto leader of Jarburg after the village's traumatic history. This small living jar first appears during Dialos's questline, when the grieving Knight arrives in Jarburg seeking purpose after his brother's death. and the revelations about Volcano Manor. Jar-Bairn explains the village's simple existence and introduces Diallos to the peaceful Jar community, triggering a series of events that culminate in Diallos sacrificing himself to defend the Jars from poacher attacks. After Diallos' death, Jar-Bairn assumes responsibility for the village, demonstrating remarkable maturity and courage despite his diminutive size. Players who bring Alexander's innards to Jar-Bairn enable the small Jar to continue his uncle's legacy, consuming the accumulated warrior essence and presumably embarking on his own journey toward greatness. The companion Jar talisman left behind suggests Jar-Bairn departed to train and grow stronger, following Alexander's example of seeking combat to prove oneself. Some players theorize that Jar-Bairn represents the next generation of warrior Jars, destined to surpass Alexander through the foundation provided by his uncle's accumulated power. The character's name, Bairn, comes from Scottish dialect meaning child, emphasizing his role as the youngest Jar warrior carrying forward ancient traditions. Jar-Bairn's story arc demonstrates From Software's talent for creating emotional investment in non-human characters, proving that effective storytelling transcends the physical appearance of participants. Millicent's Scarlet Choice. Millicent's questline presents one of Elden Ring's most morally complex decisions, requiring players to choose between helping or challenging her at the culmination of her journey in the swamp of Aeonia. This red-haired warrior suffers from scarlet rot infection, contracted from proximity to Melania, the blade of Miquella, and her entire questline revolves around searching for purpose and identity while her body slowly succumbs to decay. The questline begins in Caelid, when you retrieve the unalloyed gold needle from Commander O'Neill's corpse and deliver it to Gowry, who provides it to Millicent to halt her rot's progression. From there, Millicent appears in multiple locations throughout the lands between, each time wrestling with questions about her existence, her connection to Millennia, and whether she represents an independent person or merely a fragment of the goddess. The critical decision point arrives when you reach the drainage channel below the swamp of Aeonia and find Millicent surrounded by her 4 sisters, other scarlet rot-infected warriors who challenge her claim to individual identity. Players can summon assistants to help Millicent defeat her sisters, preserving her independence and earning her gratitude. Or they can invade and kill Millicent directly, preventing her from achieving closure but obtaining different rewards. The choice carries no obvious correct answer, as both paths offer compelling arguments about identity, autonomy, and the meaning of self in a world where gods birth fragments that claim personhood. Box Transformation. Tragedy. Bok the Seamster provides one of Elden Ring's few questlines offering a genuinely happy ending, assuming players take specific actions to prevent his self-destructive choices. This demi-human tailor first appears disguised as a tree in Limgrave, crying out when approached and revealing his true form after being struck. Bok explains that demi-humans stole his sewing implements, and recovering them from the coastal cave allows him to follow you to subsequent locations, offering free alteration services for armor. As the questline progresses, Bok expresses deep insecurity about his appearance, lamenting that his mother always told him he was beautiful despite his demi-human features. Eventually, Bok asks if you think he's beautiful, creating a pivotal decision point. Players who give Bok a larval tear enable him to visit Rennala and undergo rebirth as a human, seemingly fulfilling his desire for conventional beauty. However, this choice proves fatal. Bok's body cannot sustain the transformation, and he dies shortly after, leaving his corpse and unchanged demi-human form slumped outside Rennala's chamber. The tragic outcome reinforces that external transformation cannot resolve internal struggles, and that chasing others' standards of beauty leads only to destruction. Players who instead use the "You're beautiful, prattling pate" item near Bog before he asks about rebirth trigger alternative dialogue, where he accepts himself as he is, preventing the fatal transformation and allowing him to survive through the endgame. This hidden solution rewards players who purchase seemingly useless items from merchants and explored their contextual applications, demonstrating how Elden Ring hides crucial questline solutions behind unexpected item interactions. Thops's academic death. Thops represents one of Elden Ring's most quietly tragic NPCs, a failed sorcerer who dreams of returning to the Rileigh Academy to continue his magical studies. Players first encounter him sitting outside the academy gates, unable to enter due to lacking a glintstone key and mourning his expulsion for mediocre talent. If you provide Thops with either a spare glintstone key or obtain the academy glintstone key specifically marked for him, he expresses overwhelming gratitude and promises to resume his research. After giving Thops access to the academy, he disappears from his original location and can next be found inside the schoolhouse, sitting at a desk surrounded by scrolls and appearing to work diligently on magical theories. However, resting at a site of grace and returning to Thops's desk reveals his lifeless body slumped over his research, having apparently worked himself to death in pursuit of academic recognition. Beside his corpse lies Thops's barrier spell, a unique sorcery he developed that creates a defensive magic shield, representing his final contribution to magical knowledge. The spell's mediocre effectiveness reflects Thops's own assessment of his talents, proving competent but unremarkable compared to the legendary sorceries developed by Academy Masters. Thops's death raises questions about whether he was murdered by Academy rivals jealous of his return, succumbed to exhaustion from overwork, or simply died from pre-existing health conditions aggravated by intense study. Regardless of the specific cause, his fate demonstrates that even achieving your dreams offers no guarantee of happiness or survival in the lands between. The questline's brevity and simplicity make Thops's death hit harder, as players barely have time to know him before finding his corpse, emphasizing the casual cruelty of a world where individual lives matter little. Dialos's redemption arc. Juno Hoslow begins his journey as a somewhat pompous knight, grieving his servant Lanya's murder. Appearing first at the Round Table Hold, where he vows to hunt down her killers. His initial characterization suggests arrogance and performative heroism, as he speaks grandly about justice while taking no meaningful action. The questline progresses through multiple locations, including the Academy Gate Town and Volcano Manor, where Dialos joins the assassination contracts, but seems increasingly disillusioned with the Manor's philosophy. The turning point arrives when Dialos discovers that his own brother Juno was the final assassination target, killed by the player following Tanith's contracts. This revelation breaks Dialos's faith in the Manor and sends him searching for new purpose, eventually leading him to Jar-Bairn, the peaceful village of living jars hidden beneath the cliffs of Liurnia. In Jar-Bairn, Dialos finds redemption through service rather than glory, protecting the gentle Jar inhabitants and forming a bond with Jar-Bairn. The questline culminates when Jar poachers attack the village, prompting Dialos to mount a desperate defense. Players arriving after the assault find Dialos mortally wounded, having successfully repelled the attackers but sustained fatal injuries in the process. In his final moments, Dialos expresses contentment that he finally proved himself a true warrior by protecting those weaker than himself, achieving the honor he always sought through sacrifice rather than spectacle. His death rewards players with the Hoslow's Petal Whip, the second whip in the paired set that completes the collection started by killing Juno, creating bitter irony as the player obtains both through Hoslow family tragedy. Dialos's arc represents genuine character growth, transforming from a vainglorious knight seeking reputation into a humble protector who finds meaning through selfless action, making his death genuinely moving despite his limited screen time. Fia's Deathbed Companion. Fia the Deathbed Companion offers one of Elden Ring's strangest and most unsettling questlines, beginning innocuously when she offers to hold you at the Round Table Hold in exchange for minor stat debuffs. This embrace mechanic seems harmless initially, as Fia grants a Baldachin's Blessing consumable in exchange for temporarily reducing maximum HP until cured. However, the questline's true nature reveals itself through investigation, as Fia collects warmth from champions through these embraces, using accumulated vitality to pursue her goal of birthing a mending rune that introduces death into the Golden Order. Fia's philosophy advocates for death as a natural part of existence rather than the cursed state it became after the rune of death was sealed away. Players who explore the Round Table Hold thoroughly discover Fia cradling D, Hunter of the Dead's corpse after murdering him, having stolen the curse mark of death from his possession. This murder sends Fia fleeing to the Deeproot depths, where she awaits beside Godwyn the Golden's corrupted remains in preparation for a dark ritual. Reaching Fia requires navigating the complex underground river systems and defeating multiple bosses, including Fia's champions, who appear as summonable NPCs defending their mistress. After defeating her protectors and speaking to Fia beside Godwyn's corpse, she requests one final embrace before entering eternal sleep alongside the Prince of Death. This embrace allows her to birth the mending rune of the Death Prince, which players can use to unlock the Age of the Dustborn ending, where death becomes part of the natural order rather than a curse. Fia's questline demonstrates remarkable thematic depth, exploring concepts of maternal sacrifice, the acceptance of mortality, and whether restoring death to an immortal world constitutes mercy or cruelty. Dung Eater's Cursed Mission. The Dung Eater represents one of Elden Ring's most disturbing characters, a defiled tarnished who seeks to curse all souls for eternity by preventing them from returning to the Erdtree after death. His questline revolves around collecting 6 seedbed curses scattered across the lands between grotesque items, grown on corpses he personally murdered and defiled. Upon first arriving in Lendel, the Dung Eater appears at the Round Table Hold, in a previously locked room filled with corpses, immediately establishing his reputation as the most loathsome individual in a world already filled with monsters and tyrants. His questline requires you to become complicit in his horrifying mission, gathering the curses he cultivated on his victims' bodies and feeding them to his physical form imprisoned in the sewers beneath Lendel. The questline culminates in obtaining the mending rune of the Fell Curse, which unlocks the Blessing of Despair ending, arguably the darkest conclusion available, where you curse all life to eternal suffering. Unlike other morally ambiguous questlines, the Dung Eater offers no philosophical justification for his actions beyond pure malevolence and the desire to inflict suffering on a cosmic scale. Players who complete his questline enable what the game explicitly frames as the worst possible outcome for the lands between. Seedbed Curse Locations. Gathering the 5 seedbed curses required to complete the Dung Eater's questline demands thorough exploration of late-game areas, including Lendel, Volcano Manor, and the Haligtree. The first curse sits in a room accessible from the East Capital Rampart site of Grace in Leyndell, found on a corpse, tied to a chair atop a building with a cracked ceiling after descending an elevator and climbing through several floors. The second curse appears in the fortified manor within Leyndell, a building that perfectly mirrors the Round Table Hold's layout. Inside the room corresponding to where the Dung Eater sits in the hold, you find another defiled corpse bearing a curse, creating an unsettling parallel between the real and replica locations. The third curse requires navigating Volcano Manor's secret underground area, accessible through the room before Rykard's boss gate by using a stone sword key on an imp statue, door, and carefully platforming down giant metal cages to reach the bottom chamber. 2 additional curses await in Elfale, Brace of the Haligtree, requiring players to reach one of the game's final areas and carefully navigate balconies and hidden paths to locate corpses bearing these cursed growths. A 6th optional curse can be obtained through Blackguard Big Boggart's questline if you free the Dung Eater from his cell before Boggart dies, though only 5 curses are needed for questline completion. Sewer Jail Discovery. After presenting the Dung Eater with your first seedbed curse at the Round Table Hold, he provides the sewer jail key and demands you free his physical body from imprisonment beneath Leyndell in the subterranean shunning grounds. Reaching this location requires descending into the capital's sewers through a well accessible from the Avenue balcony site of Grace, jumping down into increasingly disgusting depths filled with rats, omen creatures, and giant poisonous flowers. The path to his cell leads through the underground roadside side of Grace, then northwest through tunnels infested with enemies, until you reach a chamber guarded by a massive spectral hand that respawns infinitely until after you obtain the key. Beyond this horror lies the sewer jail door, where the Dung Eater's true body sits imprisoned, tied to a chair and radiating malevolence even in captivity. Opening his cell and speaking to him triggers dialogue revealing his intention to defile the world through his curse, and freeing him enables his appearance as a summonable cooperator for the Mog the Omen boss fight. However, summoning him for this fight causes his sign to disappear if you progress his quest line further, creating a minor conflict between obtaining boss assistance and completing his full storyline. The sewers themselves rank among Elden Ring's most oppressive environments, filled with disease and corruption that mirror the Dung Eater's own philosophy. Outer Moat Invasion. After freeing the Dung Eater from his cell and exhausting dialogue with Blackguard Big Boggart in the outer moat northeast of Leyndell's walls, the Dung Eater invades as a hostile red phantom when you approach the center of the water. This invasion represents one of the questline's few moments of direct combat against the character himself, as he wields the Sword of Milos and fights with aggressive melee attacks amplified by the moat's giant crab that spews death-blight clouds. Clever players exploit this environmental hazard by positioning the Dung Eater near the crab's gas attacks, using the massive crustacean as an inadvertent ally against the invader. Defeating him rewards the Sword of Milos, a unique greatsword that restores FP on enemy kills, providing sustain for builds that rely heavily on weapon skills and spellcasting. After this defeat, the Dung Eater returns to the Round Table Hold, where he asks you to bring more seedbed curses to his physical body in the sewers, having apparently learned nothing from his battlefield humiliation. If you completed Boggart's questline before this invasion, his death at the Dung Eater's hands yields an additional seedbed curse, though this requires careful timing to avoid missing either the boiled crab merchant's dialogue or this optional curse source. Blessing of Despair ending. Delivering 5 seedbed curses to the Dung Eater's imprisoned body in the subterranean shunning grounds triggers a disturbing transformation sequence, where he bursts the mending rune of the fell curse through agonized screaming and convulsions. This mending rune enables the Blessing of Despair ending, considered by many players and the game's own item descriptions as the absolute worst possible outcome for the lands between. Using this rune after defeating the final boss creates an age where all souls are eternally cursed, unable to return to the Erdtree, and instead condemned to perpetual suffering even in death. The ending's cutscene shows the world covered in diseased growths and omen horns, physically manifesting the curse across all creation. Unlike other endings that present philosophical arguments about the nature of order and freedom, the Blessing of Despair offers only misery, an ending chosen either by players embracing villainy for its own sake or seeking achievement completion. After obtaining the mending rune, reloading the area and returning to the Dung Eater's cell reveals his corpse has disappeared, leaving behind the omen armor set as the only physical remnant of his existence. This armor provides decent physical defense while embodying the aesthetic of the reviled omen enemies, allowing players to literally wear the skin of societal outcasts. Goldmask's Perfect Order, Brother Corin and Goldmask's intertwined questlines pursue a vision of perfecting the Golden Order by identifying and correcting the fundamental flaw in its design, the fickleness of the gods themselves. Goldmask appears as a completely silent prophet standing in various locations throughout the lands between, always posed in his signature T-pose with arms outstretched, communicating solely through gesture and body language. Corin serves as his interpreter and follower, a monk who abandoned the Round Table Hold to follow Goldmask's philosophical journey toward divine understanding. The quest line requires finding both characters at multiple locations, including the Altus Highway, Leyndell's Colosseum, and ultimately the mountaintops of the Giants, where Goldmask reaches his final revelation. The critical moment arrives when you show Goldmask the secret of Radagon's true identity as Marika, using the law of regression incantation on a specific statue in Leyndell, revealing that the god leading the Golden Order was both male and female simultaneously. This revelation shatters Goldmask's understanding, but ultimately leads him to his greatest insight, that the gods' inconstancy stems from their essential nature, and true order requires removing divine caprice from the equation entirely. Mending Rune of Perfect Order. Goldmask's philosophical journey culminates in his death atop the mountaintops of the Giants, where his corpse can be found after defeating the Fire Giant, still frozen in his characteristic T-pose even in death. Examining his body yields the Mending Rune of Perfect Order, an artifact representing his final theorem about how to fix the Golden Order's fundamental flaw. This rune enables the Age of Order ending, which differs from the standard Age of Fracture by explicitly removing the god's ability to meddle in mortal affairs while maintaining the Golden Order's structure. The ending represents a middle path between Ranni's complete rejection of divine influence and the traditional Elden Lord conclusion that changes nothing, offering a reformed order based on absolute laws rather than divine whim. Brother Corin's reaction to Goldmask's death depends on whether you completed his questline correctly, as showing Goldmask the Radagon secret before Corin is ready causes the monk to abandon his master in horror and disappear from the game entirely. Successfully guiding both characters through their journey allows Corin to inherit Goldmask's wisdom and continue teaching miracle incantations at his final location. Goldmar's questline demonstrates remarkable subtlety for a From Software story, conveying complex theological philosophy through environmental storytelling and minimal dialogue, trusting players to interpret meaning from gesture and context. Hietta's blind journey. Hietta emerges as one of Elden Ring's most tragic NPCs, a blind woman following a path of glowing sights she believes will lead her to becoming a finger maiden. The questline begins when you encounter her near the lake-facing cliffs in Liurnia, where she asks for shabriri grapes to sustain her journey. These grapes are actually human eyeballs plucked from corpses, though Hietta remains ignorant of their true nature, commenting on their unique taste while consuming them. The questline requires finding 3 shabriri grapes at specific locations, then later providing a fingerprint grape obtained by defeating festering fingerprint Vike in the mountaintops of the Giants. Each grape advances Hietta's journey northward through Liurnia, Altus Plateau, and eventually to the Frenzied Flame prescription beneath Lendel, where her path concludes. The questline's horror deepens as Hietta gradually realizes the truth about what she's been eating, expressing revulsion, but continuing onward driven by desperation and the belief that she's found her purpose. Her final location at the sealed door protecting the 3 fingers reveals the questline's ultimate purpose. Hietta serves as a guide toward the Frenzied Flame ending, existing to shepherd potential Lords of Chaos toward embracing madness and universal incineration. 3 Fingers encounter. The 3 fingers represent the polar opposite of the 2 fingers that guide Tarnish toward becoming Elden Lord, an outer god of chaos and madness that seeks to burn away all distinction and return existence to primordial flame. Reaching this entity requires navigating the deepest depths beneath Lendel, descending through the subterranean shunning grounds to the Cathedral of the Forsaken, where Mog the Omen guards the path forward. Beyond his arena lies an altar that can only be opened by striking it with any attack, revealing a hidden passage downward through platforming challenges that test player precision over deadly drops. The path eventually leads to the Frenzied Flame prescription, a sealed door that can only be opened by removing all armor and standing before it naked, a symbolic act of stripping away worldly protections to embrace chaos. Beyond this door awaits the 3 fingers themselves, a massive hand that seizes your character in a cutscene and brands them with the Frenzied Flame, locking you into that ending path unless you complete Millicent's entire questline to obtain Miquella's needle as a cure. The encounter represents a point of no return that many players stumble into accidentally, discovering only later that they've irrevocably changed their ending options. Lord of Frenzied Flame. Ending. Accepting the Frenzied Flame from the 3 fingers enables the most destructive ending available in Elden Ring, becoming the Lord of Frenzied Flame and burning away all existence to return the world to primordial chaos. This ending occurs automatically if you receive the Frenzied Flame mark at any point before defeating the final boss, overriding all other ending options including Ranni's Age of Stars unless cured by Miquella's needle. The ending's cutscene shows your character's eyes glowing with yellow flame as they embrace Melina's corpse, assuming she sacrificed herself to burn the Erd Tree. Then unleash an inferno that consumes the entire world in cleansing fire. The philosophical justification for this ending centers on the belief that existence inherently creates suffering through distinction and separation, and only by burning away all differences can true peace be achieved. Melina explicitly opposes this path, promising to hunt you down and kill you if you choose to become the Lord of Frenzied Flame, creating the only ending where your maiden actively becomes your enemy. The ending represents cosmic nihilism, taken to its ultimate conclusion. If life creates suffering, eliminate life itself and return to the blissful non-existence before creation. Some players interpret this as the true ending despite its destructive nature, arguing it's the only conclusion that genuinely breaks the cycle of death and rebirth that has tormented the lands between. Nephili's restoration. Nephili Lu begins her journey as a warrior, tarnished, seeking to prove herself through combat, available as a summon for the Godric boss fight, and appearing throughout various locations as her questline progresses. Her storyline intertwines with Gideon Offner the All-Knowing, who reveals himself as her adoptive father, and with Kenneth Haight, the eccentric noble seeking to restore proper lineage to Limgrave's rulership. The questline becomes notably complex due to intersections with Seluvis' schemes, as the sorcerer attempts to turn Nephili into a puppet through his potion, forcing player choice between exposing the plot or becoming complicit in her enslavement. Successfully guiding Nephili's questline requires refusing Seluvis' potion, giving her the Stormhawk King spirit Ash found in the Chapel of Anticipation, and completing Kenneth Haight's Fort Liberation quest. These seemingly disconnected tasks eventually converge when Nephili appears in Godric's throne room at Stormvale Castle, alongside Kenneth Haight and the improved gatekeeper Gostok, suggesting she has claimed lordship over Limgrave with Haight's blessing. The questline's resolution rewards players with the ancient dragon smithing stone from Gideon, and access to additional dialogue exploring themes of legitimate rule, adoptive family, and whether bloodline truly matters more than character. Kenneth Haight's noble quest. Kenneth Haight first appears standing on a ruined aqueduct in Limgrave, calling down to passing Tarnished and requesting aid in reclaiming Fort Haight from demi-human invaders. This pompous noble claims descent from proper Erdtree lineage and rails against Godric's grafting practices as an abomination against natural order, establishing himself as a voice for traditional nobility in a world where power has divorced from propriety. Completing his initial request by clearing Fort Haight earns the Erdtree's favour talisman and Kenneth's gratitude. But his questline extends far beyond this simple task. The later stages require completing Nephili's questline and various trigger conditions that cause Kenneth to eventually appear in Stormvale Castle's throne room, apparently serving as advisor or supporter to Nephili's claim of lordship over Limgrave. Kenneth's character provides comic relief through his affected speech and absurd aristocratic pretensions, but his questline carries genuine thematic weight about what makes a legitimate ruler, whether blood and tradition matter more than strength and character. His ultimate acceptance of Nephili despite her warrior background, rather than noble lineage, suggests even traditionalists recognize that the old ways must adapt or perish in the wake of the shattering. Irina's Castle Morn tragedy. Irina appears sitting beside the road south of the Bridge of Sacrifice in the Weeping Peninsula, a blind girl who asks, passing Tarnished to deliver a letter to her father Edgar, the commander of Castle Morn. Her letter pleads for her father to abandon his post and flee with her, as the castle has fallen to demi-human rebels, and continuing to defend the legendary sword within serves no purpose worth their separation. Delivering the letter to Edgar within the castle triggers his refusal, as he insists his oath to protect the grafted Blaidd greatsword prevents him from abandoning his duty, even for his daughter's sake. This establishes the tragic inevitability that follows. Edgar's stubborn honor will cost him everything. After defeating the leonine misbegotten boss that wielded the grafted blade and speaking to Edgar again, he finally agrees to return to Irina, but this decision comes too late. Returning to Irina's location reveals her corpse, murdered by unknown assailants while she waited for her father's return, surrounded by flowers that mark her as an innocent victim of the Lands Between's endless violence. Edgar can be found mourning over her body, broken by grief and rage, vowing vengeance against those responsible for her death. Edgar's revenge, Edgar's transformation from dutiful castle commander to grief-maddened revenger, complete when he appears as an NPC invader later in the game, specifically at the Revenger's Shack in western Leonia of the Lakes. This invasion represents Edgar's descent into madness, as he has abandoned all pretense of nobility or honor in favor of blind vengeance, attacking any tarnished he encounters while wielding the very grafted blade he spent so long protecting. Defeating Edgar during this invasion rewards players with his armor set and the Banished Knight's halberd, though the victory rings hollow given the tragic circumstances that drove him to this fate. The questline demonstrates From Software's talent for economical storytelling, using minimal dialogue and environmental details to construct a complete tragedy about duty, family, and the price of misplaced priorities. Edgar's story carries no happy ending, no redemption arc, no moment of growth. Only the inexorable slide from honor to grief to madness that exemplifies how the shattering has broken not just the world, but the people inhabiting it. Some players never discover this conclusion, finding Irina's corpse and assuming the questline simply dead ends without realizing Edgar's later appearance provides closure, however dark. Selen's transformation horror. Sorceress Selen's questline begins innocuously with her teaching magic in the Waypoint Ruins cellar, but gradually reveals she practices forbidden sorcery that led to her expulsion from the academy and subsequent imprisonment. The questline requires helping Selen locate her original mentor, primeval sorcerer Azur, and Master Lusat, both of whom achieved transcendence through their magical research at the cost of their humanity. Finding these legendary sorcerers transforms Selen's understanding and reignites her ambition to reform the Academy's magical curriculum by force, setting up a conflict with witch hunter Jerren, who seeks to prevent her heretical research from spreading. The critical choice arrives when both Jerren and Selen summon you to the Raya Lucaria Grand library, forcing you to pick sides in their conflict. Supporting Selen and defeating Jerren allows her to claim control of the Academy, but this victory proves horrifyingly Pyrrhic. Returning to the Grand Library after resting reveals Selen has transformed into a grotesque school of graven mages, a massive sphere of human faces fused together in an abomination that represents the ultimate price of seeking forbidden knowledge. The transformation cannot be reversed, and Selen apparently remains conscious within this new form, aware of what she's become, but unable to prevent or escape it. Witch hunter Jerren's justice. Jerren presents himself as Raidan's loyal retainer and the organizer of the Radan Festival, but his deeper purpose involves hunting witches and sorcerers who practice forbidden magic that threatens reality itself. His questline intersects with both Selen's storyline and the broader narrative about the dangerous intersection of ambition and magic that corrupts everything it touches. If you side with Jerren against Selen in their final confrontation, he thanks you for helping prevent another magical catastrophe and rewards you with the ancient dragonsmithing stone, along with permission to claim Selen's bell bearing for purchasing her sorceries. Jerren's perspective casts Selen as a dangerous fanatic whose pursuit of primeval sorcery would unleash horrors upon the Lands Between, suggesting her eventual transformation into the Graven Mass represents the inevitable outcome of her research path. Interestingly, choosing to support Jerren, denies access to Selen's Witch's glintstone crown and Selen's set armor, but preserves Jerren's life, while the opposite choice kills him but leads to Selen's gruesome fate anyway, suggesting perhaps both perspectives carry truth about the dangers of unchecked magical ambition. Patches' eternal trolling. Patches returns once again in Elden Ring, after appearing in nearly every From Software game, maintaining his traditional role as a merchant-turned-traitor, who kicks players off cliffs and begs for mercy when defeated. He first appears as a boss in Murkwater Cave in Limgrave, fighting until reduced to low health before surrendering and opening his shop, selling useful items while maintaining his characteristic smug demeanor. Patches' questline extends through multiple locations, including scenic overlooks in Liurnia, where he kicks players off cliffs, Volcano Manor, where he joins the rebellion and offers his own assassination contract, and eventually the Shaded Castle, where he gives players dancers' castanets meant for Tanith. The questline's complexity comes from its intersection points with other NPCs and the constant question of whether Patches can ever be trusted, or if his every action serves selfish interest disguised as cooperation. Killing Patches at any point immediately ends his questline and locks you out of unique items he sells, though he always begs for mercy and becomes peaceful after surrender, testing player willingness to show mercy to someone who clearly doesn't deserve it. Rile's identity crisis. Rileigh appears first in Liurnia, offering a shortcut to Volcano Manor if you recover her stolen necklace from Blackguard Big Boggart, establishing her as a helpful NPC, providing transportation services. Her questline deepens when you reach Volcano Manor and discover she serves as Tanith's adopted daughter, working to recruit worthy Tarnished to the cause. The questline takes a dark turn when Rileigh begins questioning her origins and purpose, eventually leading to the revelation that she is Zariah, a serpent-human hybrid born from the god-devouring serpent that Tanith worships. This discovery sends Rileigh into an existential crisis about her identity, purpose, and whether she deserves to exist as an abomination against nature. The questline branches into multiple possible endings based on player choices. You can give her Tanith's tonic of forgetfulness to erase her memories and allow her to live in ignorant peace, kill her at her own request to end her suffering, or simply refuse both options and defeat Rykard, which causes Rileigh to accept herself and leave Volcano Manor to find her own path. The questline explores themes of identity, belonging, and whether knowledge of one's origins matters compared to the choices one makes. Bolt of Gransax. Timing. The Bolt of Gransax represents one of Elden Ring's most easily missable legendary armaments due to its strict time-limited availability in Lendil. This massive lightning bolt spear juts from a building near the Erdtree Sanctuary, accessible by carefully walking along narrow ramparts and jumping to reach the spear shaft. The weapon can only be collected while Lendil exists in its royal capital state, before progressing the main story past the point of burning the Erdtree and defeating Malekith. Once you trigger the transformation of Lendil into the Ashen Capital, the Bolt of Gransax becomes permanently unobtainable on that playthrough, locking you out of the legendary armaments achievement unless you start New Game Plus. This timing requirement catches many players off guard, as the spear's location isn't particularly hidden, but requires specific knowledge about when the capital changes states. The weapon itself performs admirably for Faith Intelligence hybrid builds that can meet its steep stat requirements, offering unique lightning-based abilities and impressive reach. Its lore describes it as a weapon used by ancient dragon cultists during the war against Lendil, making its presence embedded in the capital's architecture a physical reminder of past conflicts. Lyndel's transformation. Lindel undergoes a catastrophic transformation after burning the Erd Tree and defeating Malekith, shifting from the Golden Royal Capital into the ash-covered ruins of the Ashen Capital. This change affects the entire zone, removing NPCs, altering enemy placements, covering everything in grey ash, and permanently locking access to certain items and areas that existed only in the capital's pristine state. The transformation serves as one of Elden Ring's most significant points of no return, irrevocably changing a major area and preventing backtracking to complete missed content. Multiple items become unobtainable after this shift, including the Bolt of Gransax, certain seedbed curses, and various treasures scattered throughout the Royal District. NPCs who previously inhabited the capital disappear, their questlines ending abruptly if not completed beforehand. The Ashen Capital introduces new enemy types, including Black Blade kindred mini-bosses and enhanced knights patrolling the ruins, creating a more hostile environment than the Royal Capital's already challenging guards. Visually, the transformation demonstrates remarkable artistic commitment, as From Software rebuilt the entire area with ash-covered textures, fallen debris, and environmental storytelling, showing how the Erd Tree's burning affected the surrounding city. Haligtree's Secret Medallion. Reaching Miquella's Haligtree, one of Elden Ring's most challenging late-game areas, requires obtaining both halves of the Haligtree's Secret Medallion, hidden in widely separated locations. The right half can be found in the village of the Albinaurics in Liurnia, specifically by attacking a disguised NPC named Old Albus, who reveals himself as a pot when struck and gives you the medallion piece. The left half requires traversing to Castle Sol in the mountaintops of the Giants and defeating Commander Nile, one of the game's most challenging mini-bosses, who summons two spectral knights to assist him in combat. Obtaining both pieces allows you to use the Grand Lift of Rold's hidden function by selecting Hoist Secret Medallion instead of the normal option, which transports you to the consecrated snowfield, a vast frozen wasteland hiding the path to the Haligtree. This entire sequence remains entirely optional, as the Haligtree contains no mandatory bosses for beating the game, but houses some of the most valuable treasures and toughest encounters, including Malenia, Blade of Miquella, considered by many as Elden Ring's hardest boss. The Medallion Hunt exemplifies From Software's approach to optional content, hiding entire regions behind cryptic requirements that reward thorough exploration. The Warrior's Impossible Dream. Iron Fist. Alexander's journey represents the most ambitious quest undertaken by any living Jar in recorded history. This cheerful warrior aspires not merely to survival, but to becoming the greatest warrior Jar the world has ever known. His quest spans nearly every major region of the lands between, from the muddy fields of Limgrave, where players first discover him, hopelessly stuck in the ground, to the apocalyptic sky fortress of Crumbling Farum Azula. What makes Alexander's dream particularly poignant is the fundamental limitation of his existence. Living Jars strengthen themselves by absorbing the remains of fallen warriors into their clay bodies, gaining power from the accumulated strength of the dead. Alexander specifically seeks out the most challenging battles in the realm, deliberately placing himself in harm's way to test his mettle. When players first free him from the earth near Saintsbridge, he expresses genuine gratitude before immediately setting off to find the next impossible challenge. The Festival of War. Alexander's presence at the Raidun Festival illuminates a crucial aspect of his character. While most attendees gather out of obligation, ambition, or the promise of power, Alexander attends purely for the joy of honorable combat. he stands among legendary warriors like Blaidd the Half-Wolf and witch hunter Jerren, without the slightest trace of intimidation. During the battle against Star Scourge Radahn, one of the most powerful demigods in existence, Alexander fights with unwavering determination. Should players summon him for this apocalyptic confrontation, they witness Alexander repeatedly charging into battle against a foe who literally holds back the stars themselves. His survival of this encounter represents one of the quest's most impressive feats. After Radahn's defeat, Alexander can be found at the Star Scourge Radahn Site of Grace, where he reflects on the battle with characteristic optimism. He speaks of absorbing the remains of fallen warriors from the battlefield, including fragments of General Radahn himself, allowing him to grow stronger through this catastrophic conflict. The second obstacle. Alexander's second major predicament occurs in the Gael Tunnel, an underground mining passage infested with hostile miners and their grotesque creations. Players discover him once again wedged firmly in place, this time stuck within the rocky walls of the tunnel itself. His cheerful demeanor remains intact despite the uncomfortable situation. To free him from this second predicament, players must employ a different solution than simple physical force. Alexander requires lubrication to slip free from his earthen prison, specifically requesting oil pots to grease the surrounding stone. This presents players with a unique challenge, as oil pots must be crafted using the Nomadic Warrior's Cookbook, number 17, which can only be obtained from the merchant dwelling in the underground Siofra River region. The cookbook teaches players to craft these specialized throwing items using root resin and mushrooms. Once properly lubricated with the oil pots, Alexander slides free with tremendous relief, thanking players profusely before continuing his journey toward even greater challenges. The Volcanic Forge. Alexander's pilgrimage to Mount Gelmir reveals the depth of his commitment to self-improvement. Living jars strengthen their clay bodies through heat, and the volcanic region northwest of the capital offers the most intense natural forge in the lands between. Players can find Alexander submerged in a pool of lava near the Seathwater terminus, deliberately baking himself in the molten rock to harden his exterior shell. The heat radiating from his position makes approach dangerous for ordinary beings. Yet Alexander remains cheerful and conversational despite being literally cooked alive. He explains his methodology with straightforward logic, noting that pottery hardens in kilns through extreme temperatures, and he applies the same principle to his own clay form. This self-imposed trial demonstrates Alexander's willingness to endure tremendous suffering in pursuit of strength. After sufficient time has passed, players can find Alexander elsewhere, his shell noticeably tougher and his confidence renewed by the successful volcanic tempering. The underground village. A hidden aspect of Alexander's quest connects to Jar-Bairn, the peaceful village of living jars nestled beneath the cliffs of southern Liurnia. This settlement represents the only known community where living jars dwell in harmony, far from the violence that defines most of the lands between. Players can reach Jar-Bairn by carefully descending the Spirit Spring near the Carrion Study Hall, following a treacherous path down the cliff face. Within this hidden valley, dozens of small living jars live simple lives, tending to flowers and speaking in their characteristic broken speech patterns. The village's significance to Alexander's story lies in the character of Jar-Bairn, a small living jar who speaks of Alexander with reverence and admiration. Jar-Bairn represents the future generation, inspired by Alexander's heroic reputation. Dialos, a disgraced noble from the Hoslow family, also finds refuge in Jar-Bairn during his own questline. He serves as the village's protector, after discovering purpose in defending these innocent creatures. The connection between these storylines creates a web of meaning that deepens both narratives considerably. The final battleground. Alexander's ultimate destination showcases the full extent of his ambition and courage. Crumbling Farum Azula, a massive floating fortress that exists outside normal time, represents one of the most dangerous locations in all the lands between. This ancient dragon sanctuary hangs suspended in the sky above an endless storm, accessible only through teleportation or by burning the Erd tree itself. Alexander travels to this impossible place deliberately, seeking the ultimate test of his warrior spirit. Players encounter him near the Dragon Temple lift, standing calmly amid the apocalyptic ruins as dragons soar overhead and beastman warriors patrol the crumbling walkways. When spoken to, Alexander reveals his true purpose. He wishes to face the player character in single combat, having witnessed their incredible power throughout their journey. This request represents the culmination of everything Alexander seeks, a fair duel against the mightiest warrior he has ever encountered. The poignancy of this moment cannot be overstated. Alexander knows this battle will almost certainly result in his destruction, yet he embraces it without hesitation as the perfect conclusion to his warrior's journey. The Warrior's Testament. The duel between players and Alexander takes place on a narrow platform in Crumbling Farum Azula, surrounded by ancient dragon architecture and bottomless abyssal drops. Alexander fights with every technique he's learned throughout his extensive travels, utilizing powerful area attacks and surprisingly quick movements despite his bulk. His moveset includes devastating slams that create shockwaves across the battlefield, grab attacks that demonstrate surprising dexterity, and even the ability to summon smaller living jars to assist in combat. These summoned allies fight briefly before shattering, their fragments absorbed back into Alexander's form. Throughout the battle, Alexander maintains his cheerful warrior spirit, his dialogue suggesting he views this combat as the honorable conclusion he has always sought. When players finally shatter his clay body, Alexander's final words express gratitude and satisfaction. He acknowledges the player's superior strength and expresses pride in having faced such a magnificent opponent, finding in death what appears to be the warrior's glory he spent his entire existence pursuing. The warrior's legacy. Alexander's death yields two significant items that carry profound meaning beyond their mechanical benefits. The first is the Warrior Jar Shard, a powerful talisman that greatly boosts the attack power of all skills and ashes of war. This item represents Alexander's essential nature, the accumulated strength of countless warriors compressed into a single fragment of his being. The second item, Alexander's innards, serves a more narrative purpose. These innards consist of the warrior remains Alexander absorbed throughout his journey, including fragments of Starscourge Radon and numerous other legendary fighters. Players can deliver these innards to Jar-Bairn in Jarburg, completing a cycle of strength and legacy. When given Alexander's remains, the small jar processes this powerful material, growing stronger and more capable. In a future rest cycle, players can return to find that Jar-Bairn has crafted the companion jar talisman from Alexander's essence, an item that greatly boosts the attack power of throwing pots and perfumes. This transformation represents the continuation of Alexander's warrior spirit through the next generation, his strength living on in those he inspired. The Shadow's inevitable fate. Blaidd the Half-Wolf's questline contains one of the most tragic predetermined endings in all Elden Ring lore. Created by the Two Fingers specifically to serve as Ranni's shadow, Blaidd was engineered with a fail-safe mechanism embedded deep within his fundamental nature. Should Ranni ever betray the Two Fingers and their greater will, this hidden programming would activate, forcing Blaidd to either kill her or descend into madness attempting to resist. This cruel design means that Blaidd's loyalty to Ranni, the very quality that defines his character, becomes the source of his ultimate destruction. War Counselor Iji, who has known Blaidd since childhood, understands this terrible truth. When Ranni's plan reaches its critical phase, Iji makes an agonizing decision to imprison Blaidd in the Forlorn Hound Evergirl, a magical prison designed to contain dangerous entities. Iji hopes this confinement will protect both Blaidd and Ranni from the inevitable conflict. Players can discover the imprisoned Blaidd by visiting the Evergirl in southwestern Limgrave after Ranni retrieves the treasure of Nokron. Speaking with him through the barrier reveals his confusion and hurt at Iji's actions, completely unaware of the curse working within his own mind. The Baleful Shadow, a mysterious aspect of Blaidd's questline, involves the Baleful Shadow encountered in Nokstella during Ranni's quest. This hostile entity appears identical to Blaidd, wielding similar weaponry and fighting style, yet clearly represents a separate being. The Baleful Shadow attacks players near the Lake of Rot, blocking progress toward the Grand Cloister. This assassin's appearance has spawned considerable speculation among lore enthusiasts. Some interpretations suggest the shadow could represent a manifestation of the Two Fingers' will, sent to eliminate Ranni before she can complete her plan. Others propose it might be a dark reflection of Blaidd himself, perhaps split from his being when the failsafe began activating. The entity uses destined death in its blade rather than Blaidd's signature frost enchantment, which would support the theory of external creation rather than internal corruption. Ranni herself appears uncertain of the shadow's true nature, asking players to defeat it without identifying the assassin as her loyal companion. After the battle, miniature Ranni thanks players and requests they pass along her love to Blaidd, indicating she still believes him to be separate from the threat just eliminated. The inevitable madness. When players complete Ranni's questline and return to Ranni's rise, they discover the devastating conclusion of Blaidd's story. The half-wolf stands at the base of the tower, his mind shattered by what appears to be the impossible contradiction between his loyalty and his programming. Players can hear Blaidd before seeing him, as he mutters fragmented thoughts that suggest his internal struggle. He speaks of Ranni, of his purpose, of his confusion at the betrayal he feels but cannot understand. His dialogue indicates awareness of his deteriorating mental state, making the encounter deeply tragic. When players approach, Blaidd immediately turns hostile, attacking with frenzied desperation rather than his usual measured combat style. The battle feels less like defeating an enemy and more like granting mercy to a suffering friend. Throughout the fight, Blaidd's movements remain powerful but erratic, lacking the coordination demonstrated during earlier encounters. His attacks carry what seems to be accumulated sorrow and madness, each strike expressing the tragedy of his existence. Players must kill him to proceed, ending the suffering of a character whose fate was engineered into his very creation. The half-wolf's arsenal. Defeating Blaidd yields his complete armor set and signature weapon, each piece carrying fragments of his story within their descriptions. Blaidd's armor, a magnificent suit of black plate mail with fur trim, contains an amusing reference in its description that alludes to a certain popular animated film about accepting one's nature. The armor emphasizes how Blaidd's loyalty to Ranni transcended even his predetermined fate, fighting against his own fundamental programming to the bitter end. His gauntlets speak of strength tempered with gentleness, noting how these massive armoured hands once played with Ranni as siblings during their childhood together. The greaves reference the long roads Blaidd travelled in Ranni's service, worn smooth from countless journeys across the lands between. Most significant is Blaidd's royal greatsword, a massive blade that became enchanted with frost magic at the exact moment Blaidd swore his eternal oath to Ranni. The sword's unique skill, Wolf's Assault, allows users to channel Blaidd's signature technique, leaping into the air before crashing down with a blast of frost energy. This weapon art captures the essence of Blaidd's combat style, combining bestial aggression with the cold precision of a trained warrior. The blacksmith's grief. After Blaidd's death, players can return to War Counselor Iji at his roadside anvil to deliver the news. The ancient blacksmith's reaction reveals the depth of their relationship spanning countless years. Iji expresses profound regret for his decision to imprison Blaidd, acknowledging that despite his intentions, the confinement only delayed the inevitable. He speaks of how Blaidd became a curse that plagued Ranni's path, yet in his madness, gave himself completely to her service. This statement encapsulates the tragic nobility of Blaidd's final acts, maintaining loyalty even as his mind crumbled under impossible pressure. Iji also provides crucial context about Blaidd's origins, explaining how Queen Rileigh approved of the half-wolf, despite his supernatural nature, allowing him and Ranni to grow up as siblings. They played together in the gardens of the Carian royal family, joined by a young Iji, who served even then as their companion and guardian. These happy memories make Blaidd's predetermined fate even more cruel, as the bonds of childhood friendship could not overcome the dark programming imposed by the two fingers. Shortly after this conversation, if players rest and return to Iji's location, they discover the blacksmith has been killed by Black Knife assassins, likely sent as punishment for his role in Ranni's successful rebellion. The adopted daughter's dilemma. Nefeli Lu's questline presents one of the most complex moral situations in Elden Ring, forcing players to navigate between multiple powerful figures, each with their own agendas. Nefeli identifies herself as a warrior from the Badlands, a distant region beyond the lands between where the strong survive through constant struggle. She arrived in these lands under the guidance of her adoptive father, Sir Gideon Offner the All-Knowing, who raised her from childhood with promises of justice and righteous rule. Her surname Lu immediately connects her to Godfrey, the first Elden Lord whose true name was Horah Lu, suggesting a blood relationship despite the vast gulf in their apparent status. Nefeli's initial appearance in Stormvale Castle establishes her character as brave and compassionate, expressing disgust at Godric's grafting practices and offering to assist players in defeating the mad demigod. Her fighting style favors two-handed axes and aggressive Stormcaller techniques, channeling wind and thunder through her weapons with devastating effect. This storm affinity becomes increasingly significant as her story unfolds, linking her to both her possible ancestor Godfrey and the ancient Stormvale lineage. The Village Massacre. Nefeli's moral crisis begins in the village of the Albinaurics, a settlement of artificial humans hidden in the mist-shrouded valley south of the Great Plateau. These Albinaurics represent first-generation creations, primitive attempts to manufacture humanoid life that resulted in beings with limited mobility and brief lifespans. Despite their imperfect forms, the Albinaurics established a peaceful community, harming no one and asking only to be left alone. When players first arrive, they discover the village has been attacked with many inhabitants slaughtered and survivors hiding in terror. Nepheli stands among the bodies, shaking with rage and grief. She reveals that this massacre reminds her of a similar attack she witnessed as a child, too young and powerless to intervene. This early trauma defines much of Nepheli's character, driving her dedication to protecting the weak and punishing oppressors. The village's boss, the Omen Killer, represents the brutality of those who persecute the different and vulnerable. Nepheli's summon sign appears before this fight, allowing her to achieve some measure of catharsis through defeating this embodiment of senseless cruelty. The father's betrayal. The true horror of the village of the Albinaurics emerges when players return to Round Table Hold and speak with Gideon Ofnir. The all-knowing casually reveals that he ordered the massacre, sending his agents to extract information about the location of the Haligtree's secret medallion. The Albinaurics died because they possessed knowledge Gideon wanted, nothing more. His complete lack of remorse for this action contradicts everything he taught Nepheli about justice and righteous rule. When players inform Nepheli of her father's involvement, she experiences a devastating crisis of faith. Every principle she believed in, every lesson she learned about protecting the downtrodden, came from a man willing to order mass murder for strategic advantage. Gideon dismisses her horror as emotional weakness, informing her coldly that she has been cast out from his service. This rejection leaves Nepheli sitting on the stairs near Smithing Master Hugh, paralyzed by disillusionment and unable to determine her next action. Players find her in this state of despair, questioning everything she believed about her purpose and identity. The Stormhawk King. Nepheli's recovery requires players to undertake a specific side quest that proves surprisingly involved. The key lies in the Chapel of Anticipation, the tutorial area where players began their journey before being killed by the grafted scion and thrown into the world below. Accessing this chapel again requires using a specific portal located among the 4 belfries in Liurnia, magical towers that house ancient waygates. Players must first obtain an imbued sword key from a chest at the highest belfry, then use it to activate the portal leading back to the chapel. Upon returning, players can now defeat the grafted scion that killed them at the game's start, claiming revenge for that initial death. More importantly, they can access a previously unreachable upper level of the chapel by exiting through a side door. There, resting on a corpse, lies a peculiar item called the Stormhawk King. This spirit ash cannot be summoned in combat, existing solely as a key item with deep lore significance. The item description reveals it represents the ancient bond between the Storm and the Stormveil lineage, a spiritual connection that predates the Elden Ring's shattering. When players present this item to Nepheli, she reacts with profound emotion, recognizing something fundamental about her own nature and heritage. The throne restored. Completing Nepheli's questline requires coordinating the story arcs of 3 separate NPCs across multiple regions. Kenneth Haight, an eccentric nobleman in Limgrave, seeks to restore proper leadership to his region after Godric's tyrannical rule. He asks players to reclaim Fort Haight from invading forces, then speaks of searching for someone of proper lineage to lead Limgrave into a new era. Gatekeeper Gostok, the treacherous merchant who led players into traps during their first exploration of Stormveil Castle, serves as the third participant. After Godric's defeat, Gostok can be found repeatedly stomping on the demigod's corpse in petty revenge. These 3 characters converge at Stormveil Castle's throne room after players complete specific conditions. Morgoth must be defeated, allowing the capital to transform. Nepheli must receive the Stormhawk King and recognize her connection to the Storm legacy, Kenneth must complete his search for proper leadership. When these requirements align and players rest at the Godric, the grafted site of grace, all 3 NPCs relocate to the throne room. There, Kenneth Haight formally recognizes Nephili Lu as the rightful ruler of Limgrave, noting her obvious connection to the region's ancient bloodline. Nephili accepts this responsibility, finally finding purpose beyond her father's manipulation. She rewards players with an ancient dragon smithing stone, one of the rarest upgrade materials in the game. Gostok, now serving as her loyal merchant, sells a second ancient dragon smithing stone for 20,000 runes, representing his commitment to the New Order. The first Elden Lord connection. Nephili's appearance as a summon sign for the battle against Godfrey. First Elden Lord provides strong, circumstantial evidence for their blood relationship. When players encounter the spectral recreation of Godfrey in Lendel, they can summon Nephili to assist in the fight alongside Shabriri, if certain questline conditions are met. During this battle, Nephili fights with unusual determination and effectiveness, matching Godfrey's aggressive style despite the vast difference in their power levels. After helping defeat this shade of the first Elden Lord, observant players note that Nephili refers to herself as Nephili Lu, warrior, in exactly the same cadence that Godfrey identifies himself as Hwara Lu, warrior, before his final transformation. This linguistic parallel suggests more than coincidence, implying a familial tradition of self-identification. The connection becomes even more suggestive during the actual battle against Godfrey in his mortal form near the end of the game. If Nephili's questline has been completed, her summon sign appears again, allowing her to face her possible ancestor in his true warrior form. The fact that she survives even briefly against a being of such overwhelming power could indicate extraordinary heritage beyond normal tarnished capabilities. The puppet's alternative. Nephili's questline contains a dark branching path that players might stumble upon accidentally, resulting in permanent consequences. Preceptor Seluvis, the unpleasant sorcerer serving Ranni, creates living puppets by poisoning victims with a special potion that transforms them into mindless servants. During his own questline, Seluvis attempts to manipulate players into administering this poison to Nephili, disguising it as medicine that will help her recover from her depression. If players give Nephili the potion, she dies shortly afterward, and her puppet becomes available for purchase from Seluvis. The Nephili Lu puppet can then be summoned as a spirit ash, providing a powerful combatant who uses all of Nephili's signature techniques. However, this choice permanently locks players out of the proper conclusion to her questline, preventing her ascension to Lady of Limgrave and eliminating access to both ancient dragon-smithing stones she would otherwise provide. The puppet represents a hollow victory, mechanical power gained at the cost of narrative resolution and moral integrity. Seluvis's delight at this outcome reveals his twisted nature, caring nothing for the destruction of a person's agency and future in exchange for creating another obedient tool. The Rot-Touched Wanderer. Millicent's questline stands among the longest and most complex NPC stories in Elden Ring, spanning nearly the entire game world and connecting deeply to the lore of Malenia, Blaidd of Miquella. Players first hear of Millicent from Sage Gowry, a mysterious old man residing in a shack outside Celia, town of sorcery in Caelid. Gowry speaks of a young woman afflicted with scarlet rot, the cursed decay that has transformed much of Caelid into a festering wasteland of death and mutation. Millicent lies in the Church of the Plague above Celia, her body racked by rot and her right arm completely consumed by the disease. She warns players away, fearing the rot within her might spread to others. This selfless concern for strangers, despite her own suffering, immediately establishes Millicent as a character of strong moral character. Gowry offers to help cure Millicent if players can retrieve a specific item, the unalloyed gold needle, from the swamp of Aeonia. This needle represents one of Miquella's greatest achievements, a ritual implement designed to ward away the influence of outer gods and halt the progression of incurable afflictions like scarlet rot. The Commander's Trial. Retrieving the unalloyed gold needle requires defeating Commander O'Neill, a powerful field commander who guards the central clearing of the swamp of Aeonia. This boss fight takes place in one of the most hostile environments in the game, surrounded by pools of scarlet rot that inflict rapid build-up of the devastating status effect. O'Neill himself commands spectral soldiers who appear to assist him throughout the battle, overwhelming players with numerical superiority, while the swamp itself slowly kills them. The commander wields a massive halberd with devastating reach, combining sweeping attacks that control space with powerful thrusts that punish healing attempts. His positioning in the center of the swamp forces players to either wade through rot accumulation or engage from the relatively safe edges, limiting tactical options. Mounted combat provides significant advantage in this encounter, allowing players to quickly close distance, land strikes, and retreat before rot buildup becomes critical. O'Neill's defeat yields not only the broken unalloyed gold needle, but also Commander's Standard, a weapon skill that summons spectral soldiers similar to those he commanded. The needle itself appears snapped in half, requiring repair before it can serve its intended purpose of halting Millicent's rot progression. The Sage's secret, returning the broken needle to Gowry, begins a repair process that reveals unsettling aspects of the Sage's nature. Gowry promises to restore the needle's functionality, requesting players check back after resting. When they return, the needle has been repaired using a reddish material that fuses the two halves together. Gowry also provides Celia's secret, instructions for bypassing the magical barriers protecting the sorcerer's town above his shack. These barriers block access to key locations, including the Church of the Plague, where Millicent waits. The secret reveals 3 flame towers scattered throughout Celia, each requiring players to reach high vantage points and light the beacons. Once all 3 flames burn, the barriers dissolve, allowing access to previously sealed areas. Delivering the repaired needle to Millicent initiates her recovery. The gold implements somehow, halting the rot's progression despite medical science declaring her condition incurable. After rest, Millicent can move freely for the first time in unknown duration, the cessation of the rot's advance allowing her body to function normally. She expresses profound gratitude, presenting players with the prosthesis wearer heirloom, a talisman that raises dexterity. More importantly, she speaks of dimly remembered purpose and destiny, suggesting the rot had been suppressing crucial memories along with her physical capabilities. The journey of remembrance. Millicent's recovered mobility sets her on a pilgrimage that retraces Malenia's path across the lands between, though she does not fully understand why these locations call to her. She appears next at Gowry's shack, having travelled there to thank the sage who facilitated her cure. However, Gowry mysteriously absents himself during this visit, avoiding direct contact with Millicent now that she can move independently. This avoidance hints at deeper complications in their relationship. Millicent's next location is the Altus Plateau, specifically near the Erdtree Gazing Hill, where she stands contemplating the golden tree. Here she reveals feeling incomplete, as if something crucial remains missing from her being. This conversation triggers the next phase of her quest, sending players to the Shaded Castle in northern Altus Plateau. This fortress, surrounded by poisonous swamps and guarded by clean-rot knights, contains the Valkyrie's prosthesis, an artificial arm designed for warriors afflicted by scarlet rot. Delivering this prosthesis to Millicent provides her with a replacement for the arm destroyed by rot, restoring her combat capabilities. The prosthesis proves crucial for the journey ahead, as Millicent continues following the path of millennia toward ever more dangerous regions. The Sisters' Ambush. The climactic confrontation of Millicent's questline occurs in Elfale, Brace of the Haligtree. Deep within the sacred tree, Millennia has called home since her battle with Radon. Players find Millicent in the prayer room, speaking of finally understanding her true nature. She realizes she is somehow connected to Millennia, though whether as sister, daughter, or something stranger remains uncertain even to her. Further exploration brings players to the drainage channel, where a massive pool of scarlet rot collects beneath the Haligtree's roots. After defeating the ulcerated tree spirit that guards this fetid lake, 2 summon signs appear on the shore. One glows gold, Millicent's call for aid. The other burns red, an invasion opportunity. This choice determines the final outcome of Millicent's story and the rewards players receive. The gold sign transports players into Millicent's world, where they fight alongside her against 4 invading spirits: Mary, eldest sister; Maureen, second sister; Amy, third sister; and Pollyanna, youngest sister. These sisters, all afflicted with scarlet, rot like Millicent, attack with coordinated teamwork and devastating scarlet rot techniques. The battle tests players' ability to manage multiple aggressive opponents while protecting Millicent from being overwhelmed. Victory grants the Rotten Winged Sword insignia, a powerful talisman that greatly boosts attack power with successive strikes, making it exceptionally valuable for rapid-hitting weapons. The final choice. After successfully defending Millicent from her sisters, players can find her resting beside the rot pool, grievously wounded from the intense battle. Through exhausted dialogue, she reveals the terrible truth Gori concealed. She and her sisters were raised as daughters of rot, cultivated beings designed to bloom into scarlet Aeonia flowers when millennia ascends to godhood. This grotesque plan would transform Millicent into a mindless vessel for rot propagation, destroying her identity and will in service to an outer god. Gowry sought this outcome with twisted, paternal affection, seeing the transformation as Millicent achieving her truest form. Recognizing the horror of this fate, Millicent makes a conscious choice to reject it completely. She removes the unalloyed gold needle from her own flesh, deliberately allowing the scarlet rot to resume its progression. This decision means certain death, but death as herself rather than transformation into something fundamentally different. She entrusts the needle to players, asking them to return it to Millennia, the one who truly deserves such a powerful tool for resisting divine influence. After this final conversation, Millicent passes away, leaving behind her prosthesis and the profound impact of her choice to determine her own fate, even at the cost of her life. The needle's true purpose. The unalloyed gold needle recovered from Millicent's body serves a crucial function far beyond curing scarlet rot. Players can carry this needle to the boss chamber where they fought millennia, waiting until a massive scarlet Aeonia flower blooms from the goddess's resting place. Interacting with this flower while holding the needle transforms it into Miquella's needle, revealing its ultimate purpose. This perfected implement can be used at a very specific location. The arena where players battle Dragon Lord Placidusax in Crumbling Farum Azula, a place that exists outside normal time. Using the needle there allows players to reverse the Frenzied Flame ending, undoing the brand of chaos that would otherwise lock them into becoming the Lord of Frenzied Flame. This mechanic provides the only method to escape the Frenzied Flame's influence after accepting it, making Millicent's questline essential for players who wish to explore that dark path without committing to its permanent consequences. The needle's creation represents Miquella's genius at crafting tools to resist the influence of outer gods, allowing mortals agency in the face of cosmic entities that would shape their fate. The Kindred's Truth. Returning to Gowry after Millicent's death reveals shocking truths about the sage's nature. If players aided Millicent against her sisters, Gowry mourns her decision to reject blooming, lamenting that she came so close to becoming a perfect flower. His words carried disturbing affection mixed with incomprehension. Unable to understand why Millicent would choose death over transformation into a vessel for an outer god, he asks whether Millicent and Malenia detest him and the other children of Rot so utterly, revealing his complete inability to recognize personhood beyond service to the Scarlet Rot. If players attack and seemingly kill Gowry at this point, his body transforms into a kindred of Rot, one of the large humanoid pest creatures found throughout Caelid. When players return after resting, Gory has reappeared at his shack, cheerfully noting that killing him proves futile, as he can simply inhabit a different pest body. This revelation recontextualizes every interaction with the sage, suggesting he may be either a particularly intelligent kindred of Rot wearing human form, or something stranger that can transfer consciousness between bodies. His true nature remains deliberately ambiguous, though clearly extends far beyond the frail old man appearance he maintains. Killing him permanently after Millicent's quest conclusion yields Gowry's bell bearing and the flock's canvas talisman, ending his existence but providing valuable tools for incantation-focused builds. The Witch of Courier's design, Ranni the Witch, orchestrates perhaps the most elaborate questline in all of Elden Ring. A conspiracy spanning millennia that aims to fundamentally reshape the cosmic order governing the lands between. Players first encounter Ranni at the Church of Elleigh, where she appears as a spectral projection calling herself Renna. She gifts the spirit calling bell and lone wolf ashes, enabling players to summon spirit allies throughout their journey. This seemingly simple act of kindness masks deeper purpose, as Ranni seeks capable warriors to further her ambitions. Her true base lies at Ranni's Rise, one of 3 towers in the region called the Three Sisters, accessible only after defeating Royal Knight Loretta at Carrier Manor. The manor itself stands as testament to the Carrion royal family's former glory, now mostly abandoned and overrun by hostile sorcerers and hands of twisted fingers. Reaching Ranni's Rise requires navigating the manor's magical defenses and solving environmental puzzles involving illusory floors and hidden pathways. Upon reaching the tower's summit, players meet Ranni in her doll body, a small 4-armed figure that serves as her vessel after she orchestrated the death of her original form during the Night of Black Knives. The Eternal City's secret. Ranni's primary objective involves retrieving a hidden treasure from Nokron, the Eternal City buried deep beneath the lands between. This ancient underground metropolis predates the Erdtree itself, built by a civilization that challenged the greater will and suffered divine punishment through meteor strikes that buried their cities beneath the earth. Nokron's architecture reflects this tragedy, with buildings constructed for a civilization that no longer exists, and streets patrolled by spectral assassins and strange mimic creatures. Accessing Nokron requires defeating Star Scourge Radahn, whose gravitational magic holds the stars themselves frozen in place. When Radahn falls, a specific star crashes into the Mistwood region of Limgrave, creating a massive crater and opening a chasm that descends into Nokron's depths. This connection between Radahn and Nokron reveals the scope of Ranni's planning, as she needed Radahn defeated specifically to access the city. The meteor's impact reshapes the landscape permanently, leaving a field of floating boulders suspended in the air above the newly opened passage. Descending into Nokron reveals a hauntingly beautiful cityscape frozen in time, its silver architecture illuminated by an impossible full sky that mimics starlight. The Fingerslayer Blaidd. Deep within Nokron lies the treasure Ranni seeks, the Fingerslayer Blaidd, a cursed weapon forged from a corpse by the Nox civilization. The Blaidd's purpose terrifies the Greater Will and its agents because it possesses the unique ability to harm the Two Fingers, physical manifestations of the outer god's will that are otherwise invulnerable to conventional weapons. The Nox created this blade during their rebellion against divine authority, hoping to sever their connection to the Greater Will and determine their own fate. Their punishment came swiftly in the form of divine meteors that destroyed their surface cities and buried their civilization underground. The Blaidd survived buried in Nokron's depths, waiting for someone with sufficient purpose to claim it. Retrieving the Fingerslayer Blaidd requires navigating through the Eternal City to the Knight's sacred ground, defeating the mimic tier boss that copies the player's exact equipment and abilities. Beyond this unique challenge, a massive throne room stands empty, except for a corpse clutching the blade. Claiming this weapon feels significant beyond its immediate function, as if players have taken possession of an artifact whose very existence challenges the cosmic order. The Carrion Reversal. Delivering the Fingerslayer Blaidd to Ranni triggers a cascade of events that reshape multiple questlines. Ranni thanks players and gifts them the Carrion Inverted Statue, an item that unlocks the true purpose of the Carrion Study Hall in Liurnia. This tower initially appears to be a vertical library with platforms ascending toward a distant ceiling. However, using the inverted statue on the pedestal at the hall's base reverses the entire structure, turning the ceiling into the floor and creating new pathways to previously inaccessible areas. This inversion demonstrates the advanced magical engineering of the Carrion royal family, creating architecture that exists in multiple configurations simultaneously. The newly accessible areas lead down into depths rather than up into heights, eventually connecting to the Divine Tower of Liurnia. This tower holds significance as the location where Ranni's original body rests after the Night of Black Knives, preserved in a state between life and death. The corpse sits in a chair at the tower's summit, a reminder of the price Ranni paid to escape the destiny imposed upon her by the Two Fingers. The miniature's guidance. After Ranni accomplishes her immediate goal with the Fingerslayer Blaidd, she withdraws into deep slumber, leaving players to navigate the next phase independently. Her departure unlocks Renna's Rise, the northernmost tower of the Three Sisters that remains sealed throughout earlier portions of the questline. At Renna's Rise summit, players find the Snow Witch armor set that Ranni wore before abandoning her physical form, along with a functioning portal. This waygate transports players to a remote section of the Ainsel River, far from the main entrance accessible through the Ainsel River Well. Immediately upon arrival, players discover a small doll version of Ranni sitting motionless on the ground. Taking this miniature Ranni seems innocuous initially, but resting at a site of grace reveals new interaction options. players can attempt to speak with the miniature, though the first 2 attempts yield only silence. On the 3rd attempt, the doll suddenly responds with Ranni's voice, explaining that she maintains a fragment of consciousness within this vessel. The miniature Ranni becomes a traveling companion of sorts, providing guidance and commentary as players delve deeper into the underground regions. The Shadows hunt. Miniature Ranni directs players toward Nokstella, another eternal city connected to the underground river system. This sister city to Nokron exhibits similar architecture, but features unique environmental hazards, including lakes of scarlet rot and platforms suspended over deadly drops. Navigating Nokstella requires careful platforming and combat against silver tears, shape-shifting creatures that can mimic player movements. The city's depths house increasingly dangerous enemies, including crucible knights and massive land squirts that fire pressurized rot projectiles. Eventually, players reach the Nokstella waterfall basin, where the underground river cascades into deeper caverns. Here, an NPC invasion triggers as players approach the Lake of Rot. The Baleful Shadow appears, an assassin wearing armor identical to Blaidd, and wielding a greatsword with similar dimensions. This entity fights with aggressive tactics and powerful destined death attacks that bypass percentage-based damage reduction. Defeating this shadow proves crucial for progression, as Ranni identifies it as a threat to her plans. Upon the shadow's defeat, miniature Ranni thanks players and provides the discarded palace key, granting access to a previously sealed chest in the Grand Library of Raya Lucaria. The Cursed Ring. The chest in Raya Lucaria's Grand Library, located in the same chamber where players fought Rennala, contains the Dark Moon Ring. This cursed wedding band represents the final component of Ranni's plan, though its purpose remains mysterious until later stages. With the ring in hand, players must brave the Lake of Rot, one of the most hostile environments in the entire game. This massive underground lake consists entirely of scarlet rot that rapidly builds up the deadly status effect, killing players within seconds of exposure. Crossing requires using scattered stone platforms while managing rot buildup through consumables or specialized equipment. The lake's far shore leads to the Grand Cloister, a massive chamber housing a grotesque collection of pests and worshippers devoted to the scarlet rot. Beyond this chamber lies one of the game's most visually striking boss arenas, a cavern filled with crystalline formations and cosmic energy. Astel, naturalborn of the void, guards the passage beyond, a cosmic horror with the body of a gigantic insect and a skull-like head wreathed in purple energy. This entity wields gravitational magic and teleportation abilities, creating a battle that feels more like fighting a natural disaster than a mortal creature. The Cathedral of Stars. Beyond Astel's arena lies a passage leading to the Moonlight Altar, a surface region atop the western cliffs of Liurnia that remains inaccessible through conventional means. This plateau features the Cathedral of Manus Celes, an ancient structure dedicated to the Dark Moon. The cathedral's architecture reflects Carian style but predates the current dynasty, suggesting connections to even older traditions of moon worship. Within the cathedral's main chamber, a massive hole descends into underground catacombs. These depths wind through crypts and treasure chambers before reaching a final hidden area where Ranni's true body awaits. The spectral witch kneels in this chamber, waiting for the one who has faithfully served her cause throughout an impossibly complex questline. When players approach and use the Dark Moon Ring, an interaction prompt appears allowing them to place the ring on Ranni's finger. This marriage binds player and witch in a cosmic union that will reshape the world's fate. Ranni awakens fully, acknowledging the player as her consort and offering the Dark Moon greatsword, a legendary weapon that channels the power of her Dark Moon through frost and magic. This blade represents the culmination of her questline's tangible rewards, a weapon of immense power for intelligence and strength builds. The Age of Stars. Completing Ranni's questline grants access to a unique ending, separate from the standard conclusions available through other paths. After defeating the final boss and gaining access to the fractured Marika statue, a blue summoning sign appears on the ground nearby. Activating this sign summons Ranni's spirit, allowing players to initiate the Age of Stars ending. This conclusion fundamentally differs from other endings by removing the influence of the Elden Ring and its associated outer gods entirely from the lands between. Ranni's plan succeeds in establishing a new cosmic order where the moon and stars guide fate rather than the golden order of the Erd Tree. The ending cinematic shows Ranni and the player departing together on a journey among the stars, leaving the lands between to determine its own path without divine intervention. This represents what many interpret as one of the more hopeful conclusions available, offering genuine change rather than merely replacing one lord with another. The philosophical implications suggest freedom from predetermined destiny, allowing mortals to shape their own fate without cosmic entities manipulating events from beyond comprehension. The Dung Eater's Revulsion. Among Elden Ring's darkest questlines, the Dung Eater's story explores depths of depravity and horror that exceed even the game's baseline grimness. This character earns his revolting title through actions so vile that merely speaking his true name summons his attention. The Dung Eater seeks to curse every living being in the lands between through a specific form of defilement that taints the soul itself, preventing rebirth through the Erd Tree and condemning victims to eternal suffering. His methods involve defiling corpses in ways the game wisely leaves to imagination, creating cursed omens through post-mortem mutilation. The Dung Eater's presence in Round Table Hold creates palpable tension, as this serial killer sits imprisoned in a cell below the main chamber. Speaking with him reveals unwavering commitment to his horrific purpose, describing his vision of a world where everyone bears the curse and none can escape. The Blessing of Despair. His dialogue drips with sadistic glee at the prospect of spreading this curse to every soul in existence. The Seedbed Curse Collection. Freeing the Dung Eater requires collecting seedbed curses, physical manifestations of his defilement found on specific corpses throughout the lands between. These cursed items emanate malevolent energy, their descriptions confirming they originate from the Dung Eater's grotesque rituals. Each curse weighs heavily in the player's inventory, not through game mechanics, but through narrative implication, representing another victim of this monster's depravity. The curses can be found in Leyndell among the capital's nobles, and in the consecrated snowfield among those who sought refuge far from civilization's remnants. Collecting these cursed remains feels actively unpleasant, the game ensuring players understand they participate in something fundamentally wrong. Delivering seedbed curses to the Dung Eater strengthens him, feeding his power through the suffering he has caused. After collecting sufficient curses, players can choose to free him from imprisonment, unleashing this force of pure malevolence upon the world. Alternatively, they can seek Seluvis' special potion, designed to transform the Dung Eater into a controllable puppet, turning his strength towards serving the player rather than his apocalyptic vision. The Blessing of Despair. The Dung Eater's questline leads to one of the game's most disturbing endings, the Blessing of Despair. This conclusion requires feeding the Dung Eater sufficient curses until he can be challenged at the outer moat of the capital. After defeating him in combat, players receive his Mending Rune of the Fell Curse, an item that permanently taints the Elden Ring. Using this rune when repairing the shattered ring curses all life throughout the lands between and beyond, ensuring that every soul born henceforth carries the Omen Curse. The ending cinematic presents this outcome with appropriately bleak imagery, showing the world consumed by writhing curse marks and eternal suffering. This ending represents the darkest possible future for the world, transforming the entire cosmic cycle into an engine of perpetual torment. The Dung Eater achieves his demented vision, proving that even in a world already broken and suffering, things can always become worse through deliberate malice and cruelty. The Volcano Manor Brotherhood. The Volcano Manor questline offers players the opportunity to join an organization of Tarnished dedicated to hunting other Tarnished, serving Lady Tanith and her consort Praetor Rykard. This militant faction operates from a mansion built into the volcanic slopes of Mount Gelmir, where the heat itself serves as protection against unwanted intrusion. Reaching the manor requires navigating the treacherous lava fields and defending against numerous hostile forces, including man-serpents who worship the volcano's master. Upon arrival, Lady Tanith extends an invitation to join their cause, framing their assassination contract as righteous work, eliminating obstacles to the player's path toward becoming Elden Lord. This recruitment pitch deliberately obscures the darker purpose driving the manor's operations. Accepting her invitation grants access to the manor's inner chambers and introduces players to Patches, the familiar trickster from previous From Software titles, who has somehow survived into this new world. Other members include Juno Hoslow, a nobleman seeking purpose after failing to protect his servant, and Bernal, a tarnished warrior whose cynicism toward the Erdtree runs deep. The Recusant Hunts. Volcano Manor assignments involve invading specific Tarnished at designated locations throughout the lands between and killing them to claim letter rewards. Each contract provides a target's name, location, and brief description, transforming player versus player mechanics into narrative content. The first contract sends players after old Knight Istvan in Limgrave, a loyal servant of the Round Table Hold who must die to prove the player's commitment. Subsequent contracts escalate in difficulty and moral complexity, including hunting Rileigh the Idle in Altus Plateau and Juno Hoslow in the mountaintops of Giants. Completing these assassination contracts rewards players with unique weapons and armor sets taken from the slain, turning murder into mechanical advancement. Lady Tanith praises each successful kill, further rewarding loyalty with gifts of powerful equipment. However, based on environmental storytelling and item descriptions, the questline's darker purpose gradually reveals itself. Evidence suggests the manor serves as recruiting ground for warriors to feed to Rykard, the serpent god, who consumes champions to grow stronger. Every Tarnished who joins and succeeds in the manor's service eventually faces the choice of confronting this truth or becoming the next meal in what appears to be an endless cycle of consumption. The god-devouring serpent, the Volcano Manor questline, culminates in the boss chamber of Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, one of the game's most grotesque demigods. Rykard fed himself to the great serpent dwelling within Mount Gelmir, merging human and snake into a blasphemous fusion of flesh that grows stronger by consuming champions. His vast body coils throughout a lake of magma, the serpent head emerging to attack, while Rykard's human torso emerges from its maw, wielding a massive blade wreathed in lava. The arena itself presents unique challenges, with limited safe platforms surrounded by deadly lava that kills in seconds. However, players can claim the Serpent Hunter Spear from a corpse near the arena entrance. This specialized weapon extends its reach dramatically when wielded in Rykard's presence, allowing players to damage the massive boss from relative safety. The weapon's design specifically countered Rykard's serpentine form, created by ancient warriors who first attempted to slay the volcano's monster. Defeating the god-devouring serpent forces Rykard's emergence in his true form, the demigod joining the battle with powerful magic and overwhelming area attacks that cover the entire arena in explosions and lava. The Rekisan's treasure. Rykard's defeat yields substantial rewards, including the remembrance of the blasphemous and access to his personal chambers deeper within the volcano. His remembrance can be exchanged for either Rykard's rancor, a sorcery that summons the vengeful skulls of those he consumed, or the blasphemous Blaidd, one of the game's most powerful weapons. This greatsword heals the wielder with each enemy killed and can unleash Taker's Flames, an explosive attack that damages enemies in a wide area while restoring health based on damage dealt. Beyond combat utility, the Blaidd's healing properties make it invaluable for sustaining extended exploration sessions without consuming healing flasks. Returning to Lady Tanith after Rykard's death reveals her unshakable loyalty to her monstrous consort. She cannot accept his death, choosing instead to begin consuming his corpse piece by piece in a grotesque parody of communion. This discovery transforms earlier interactions with Tanith, revealing that her warm hospitality and aristocratic manners masked complete devotion to the serpent god and willingness to embrace his blasphemy.